You don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look at better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the third part of What If Naruto Enters JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of kyugan on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Stand, Hurricane Heart. User, Uzumaki Naruto. Power, A speed, B range, C. Staying, C precision, C learning, A. 1 manipulates wind, can range from long-range vacuum blades to close-range tornado fists. 2 increases the regeneration rate of the user. 3 capable of channeling Hammon. Nara Shikaku sighed as he walked through the hospital doors alongside his wife. The love of his life had been a nervous wreck worrying about Shikamaru, so much so that she had actually resorted to ripping her hair out, before realizing the folly in this and proceeding to rip out his. In order to put her mind at rest and fend off forced baldness, the head of the Nara family figured it'd be best to bring her to see the boy. Behind the couple strode Akamichi Choza and his wife, the latter carrying a fruit basket which both fathers just knew was going to be confiscated. Knowing better than most how the staff at the hospital worked, Shikaku having worked here as an intern himself once. When they arrived at the desk, the Nara patriarch was shocked at the look of fear that showed on the receptionist's face when he mentioned whom they'd come to visit. The same fear was shown on the faces of several loitering orderlies, one actually running down the hallway screaming about red eyes. They only managed to snag one to lead them to the boy's recovery room after having his job threatened. "You're here to take them home, right?" said orderly asked, looking at the parents pleadingly. "There's nothing wrong with them physically, but..." He shivered every time we go in. "Things have moved." "Moved?" Shikaku asked flatly. "You mean they moved the equipment about?" He raised an eyebrow as the man shook his head rather quickly. "A stereo system, takeout, snacks," the orderly counted off on his fingers. "Things the hospital confiscates or refuses to allow in all appear in the room whenever we come in." The distraught man explained, shivering in fear. "Even after the stuff is removed it's back as soon as we take our eyes of it." Choza's wife looked at her husband in concern, only for him to pat her on the arm reassuringly. Shikado merely shook his head and marched through the door, stating he'd believe it when he saw it. Needless to say, the fact the boy's room was decked out like a college student's took the man's breath away. A stereo belted out the latest baseball results. A pile of takeout boxes lay piled messily in a bin, several burger wraps lying on the floor. Several manga, including Shonen Jump, were resting on the bedside tables, the exact same ones his wife had claimed were missing from his son's room. "Yo, Oyaji," Shikamaru greeted, looking up from a more recent Jump volume as Chaoji put away yet another bowl of rice. "You visiting or did mom hit you too hard again?" "Visiting," Shikaku replied calmly, steadying himself. "Don't see the point though, you're obviously well enough to mouth off." The elder Nara eyed the stuff lying around with a raised eyebrow. "Care to explain all this?" he asked, to which his son merely shrugged. "Didn't think so, come on, the car is double parked." Shikamaru sighed, muttering something about troublesome parents before gesturing to Chaoji, who nodded, inhaling the bowl, and setting it on top of a pile of used ones. The teens gathered up all the comics and the stereo, before walking out the door, Chaoji's mom fussing over him, asking if he had gotten enough to eat, ignoring the 13 bowls of teriyaki threatening to fall off the nightstand. "Naruto stopped by the day you got hurt," Shikaku commented offhandedly, earning a sharp look from his wife, who didn't like the blonde much. He looked ready to burst the gasket when he heard what happened. Shikamaru snorted, an image of Oni Naruto, ogre club and all, sitting upon a burning pile of yakuza, roaring with rage entering his thoughts. Knowing that hothead that isn't too far-fetched, he muttered as his shadow apparently grew a pair of eyes, leering at the trembling form of the orderlies, who spent the rest of the day looking over their shoulders, flashlights in hand. Hinata kept her head lowered as the car drove through the industrial area for what seemed to be the umpteenth time this week. Her father was attending yet another business meeting, and of course he had brought her along, which meant Neji was brought along as well. The older teen was currently sitting across from her. The reason behind her lowered gaze is he refused to take his eyes off her for 1 second, lest she cause even more trouble, as he'd so delicately put it. "This is an important meeting," Hayashi commented, catching their attention and breaking the silence with it. "Hyuga Enterprises will have gained a solid foothold into the eastern block of Konoha. He flipped through his notes. After that, we need to make a detour. Apparently some prime warehousing has become available. He eyed his daughter and nephew carefully. Be on your best behavior. Both teens nodded their understanding, before resuming their silence, the only noise the rumbling of the engine. Haruka moaned as he woke up in bed, feeling like he'd been put through the ringer. He sat up, wincing as his back protested, noting he was wearing his pajamas, despite having no recollection of getting changed. He would have thought more on the issue were it not for the smell of eggs wafting in from the kitchen. "Sensei, you awake?" Naruto's voice called out, sticking his head out the kitchen door to eye the man as he opened the bedroom door, the blonde looking ridiculous in a Kiss the Cook apron. "Breakfast's on the way. Just sit at the table." Haruka moaned and did as he was told, wincing as some of his muscles ached in protest. "What happened last night?" he wondered, shaking his head wearily. "I recall following Mizuki to the warehouse, then he tied me up in the office." And Haruka trailed off as his head throbbed, dropping the trail of thought after Naruto entered, a plate of egg and toast in each hand. "Scrambled eggs and toast, just the way you like it," the blonde announced, setting a plate in front of the smiling instructor. "Sorry, but I helped myself to your fridge, sensei." Haruka chuckled, waving it away as he dug into the nourishing food with gusto. "You haven't lost your touch," he commented. "These eggs are superb." "Well, it's not like I can live off ramen all the time," Naruto replied with a smirk, biting into his own helping. "Can you imagine what that'd be like?" "I can actually," Haruka replied with a smile. "You'd be a short little bastard who got into fights because people mocked your height as well as your looks," he added as an afterthought. "HMMPH," Naruto muttered, taking a bite out of his toast. "See if I make you breakfast again." He pouted, earning a laugh from Haruka, only for the man to wince as his back muscles ached. "Feels like I was thrown out a window," the instructor moaned, blinking as he eyed the rope burns around his wrist. "What the, Naruto?" he asked, holding up his wrists in confusion. "Do you know what? Well, I gotta get going," Naruto announced, getting to his feet far too quickly to be seen as casual, pulling on his coat as he got to the door. "Hope you feel better, sensei." "Ya na." "Oi, Naruto," Haruka called out, only to sigh as the door shut behind the teen. "What happened last night?" "Man," Naruto gasped, sighing as he rested the back of his head against the door to the apartment. "It's great Haruka-sensei can't remember anything, especially after everything Mizuki put him through." He sighed and shook his head, "But I hate having to lie about it." Pushing off from the door, the teen walked down the steps, hands in his coat pockets as he decided to check up on his buddies, only to find them standing at the bottom of the steps waiting for him. "Yo," Shikamaru greeted, leaning against the wall, arms crossed as he noted the arrival of his friend. "Headache, figured you'd be here." He nodded up the steps. "How's sensei doing?" "Fine," Naruto replied, thumbing over his shoulder. "Doesn't remember a thing either. I think it's better that way." He eyed the two, hands in his pockets. "You guys look well." "That's a nice way of putting things," Shikamaru muttered, "considering I got shot at and Choji run over." He looked up at the blonde's look of shock. "I told you messing with the gangs would lead to trouble." Naruto stared at the two in shock, before lowering his head, clenching his fist at the memory of the ambulance pulling away from the Nara home. "Sumanai." "Apology accepted," Shikamaru replied, causing the blonde to look up in surprise. "We knew what we were getting into when we first met you." The Nara added, "It's our fault for being worried about your ass. There's no reason to apologize to us," Choji added, munching on a bag of donuts. "We chose to stick by you." Naruto eyed the two in amazement, before lowering his gaze again, a smile on his features. "You bastards," he chuckled. "Remind me never to worry about you again." "Noted," Shikamaru replied, pushing off the wall. "On another note, I hear you got into a fight with some uptown guys a while back. They've been hanging around the east side a lot lately." Choji commented. "Dad says a whole lot of businesses have been bought over by this one family." "Family?" Naruto asked, earning a nod from Shikamaru, who held up the morning paper for him to read. "Hey, this guy looks like that Neji bastard." "That's Hyuga Hayashi," Shikamaru explained, president and CEO of Hyuga Industries, largest industrial chain in Konoha. He kicked a can out of the way. "Insurance, manpower, construction, transport." He nodded at the paper. "You name it, this guy has his hands in it." Naruto flipped through the pages, blinking as he espied a younger-looking Hinata standing next to the man, decked out in a kimono. "Here's Hinata," he announced, flushing slightly at how adorable she looked, earning a snort from Shikamaru. She's his firstborn and the apparent heir, the lazy teen noted. Looks like there's a lot of responsibility on her shoulders. He shook his head. You picked a hell of a girl to fall in love with. Naruto flushed and ripped the paper in half, waving his arms like windmills. Love. The hell? What are you? 5. Shikamaru muttered, sighing as the teen seethed at him. All right, fine. It isn't love, you're just concerned. Damn straight. Naruto muttered, flush dying down as he shifted his collar. Damn it, Shikamaru, you gotta watch what you say. The Nara scoffed before pointing at the remains of the paper. It mentioned he was taking a tour of the industrial area. I heard he's buying up warehouses to use as storage. He nodded at the other two. It's such a pain, but I figured you'd want to check it out. Naruto looked thoughtful for a few moments before grinning and turning to face the street. Yer tebeo, he snorted. A hero's work is never done. What's that make us then? Shikamaru muttered, falling in behind his friend, the sidekicks. More like minions. Naruto shot back, dodging out of reach and dashing off. Ha. You're 100 years too slow to hit me. Mendocuse, Shikamaru muttered, sweat dropping at the blonde's hyperactivity. I really hate morning people. Hayashi nodded as he looked over the warehouse. It was exactly as it had been described. Spacious, soundproofed, and the security mechanisms in place were the most recent and reliable on the market. And the previous owners aren't here because, he asked, eyeing the salesman critically, causing the man to shuffle his feet. Died in a car accident, Ikagoya replied, his best sales smile on his face caught inside. Shame really? He was an excellent source of income. And I'm sure his life was worth quite a bit more, Hayashi retorted, not liking the man's tone. Why yes of course, the salesman replied, wringing his hands as he fought back a curse. Why did that dumbass have to go and get himself killed in a turf war? He wondered scathingly. We had a sweet deal going here. Not even the Hurricane King knew where we were. Everything seems to be in order, Hayashi responded, snapping the Ikagoya out of his inner rant. Send the paperwork through to my secretary, and I'll sign them immediately. Of course, the weasel of a man replied, bowing at the waist. A pleasure doing business with you, Hyuga-sama. Hayashi nodded coldly and turned to face the exit, where his offspring were waiting along with the retinue. Hinata standing as close to her cousin as possible, recognizing the man from the arcade. Hayashi paused briefly, turning his head to eye the man one last time. Ikagoya-san, the Hyuga patriarch called out. This property wasn't involved in any illegal activities, was it? The weasel flinched, before laughing far too loudly to be seen as genial. Illegal. My Hayashi-sama, what a sense of humor you have. He slapped his knee. Would I sell such a thing to a man like yourself? Hayashi eyed the man carefully, before shrugging and making his way to the exit. Ikagoya sighed, eyeing the businessman with distaste. Nosy little prick, the weasel thought. If it weren't for your money and connections, I'd kill you right here. He leered across at Hinata. Who knows? I'd probably make a buck off you, daughter, too. Oi, Shikamaru, a loud voice called out, startling everyone. This is where those Yakuza thugs were hanging out. Everyone froze, Ikagoya turning pale and Hinata magenta at the sound of the voice. Neji raised his eyebrows and Hayashi eyed the pale salesman like a hawk. I am sure they're talking about the outside, Ikagoya weaseled. Only to pale as a familiar blonde-headed horror rounded the corner in all his glory. You sure this is the place? Shikamaru muttered, before noting the limo parked outside the factory, and the people beside it. Hey, check it out. Naruto wondered, eyeing the gathered people in interest, before catching sight of Ikagoya and raising an eyebrow. Ikagoya, you trying to rip people off again? He looked from the sputtering salesman to Hayashi, blinking in confusion. Hey, why do I know you from somewhere? Oh, Shikamaru muttered, coming up behind the teen. That's Hyuga Hayashi, you saw his picture not 10 minutes ago. Yurusei, Naruto responded, spiking out like a cat. I got a bad memory for names and faces. All right. Shikamaru sighed, eyeing the surroundings warily, noting the entourage and the Hyuga heiress between them. Oi, he muttered, nudging the blonde in the ribs. There she is. Naruto blinked, turning to catch sight of the flushing heiress, breaking into a smile and waving. Hinata-chan, he called out, walking up with a grin. What are you doing here? Abruptly, several guns were pointed at his face, the blonde blinking in surprise as several large-suited men glared at him. Step away from Hinata-sama, one muttered, cocking the hammer back. You have until 3 before we open fire. Naruto raised an eyebrow, eyeing the crowd until his eyes fell on a familiar face just beyond them. Still hiding behind your thugs team, he called out, earning an aloof snort from Neji. Who do you think you're talking to? The guards yelled, moving to pistol whip the teen, only to collapse as an invisible fist rammed into their stomachs. Too damn noisy, Naruto muttered, Hurricane Heart disappearing behind him as he eyed Neji with a smirk. You'd think with all the money you have you could afford some better guards. So Naruto has won too, Shikamaru noted, having seen the stand as it had struck the thugs. Pretty damn powerful too, I don't envy those guards. He nodded to Choji, the two of them deciding to hang back unless Naruto needed help. Choji putting away his chips and the lazy teen leaning against the wall of the warehouse. Hinata flushed as Naruto continued to glare at her cousin, Neji returning the glare with equal intensity. She could almost feel the pressure building between the two, like some invisible thunderstorm looming over the horizon. If this keeps up they'll get into another fight, she thought worriedly. The memory of the last time the two clashed was still raw in her mind. Naruto lying limp in the crater and Neji's blood flying through the air. I have to say something, she thought, reaching out a hand, only for her voice to fail her. She shook herself, cleared her throat and tried again, only for another voice to intervene. Stop this, Hayashi called out, his voice leaking absolute authority. While this is far from being a public street, I will not abide a fight taking place in my presence. He looked to his nephew, who lowered his gaze after a moment's rebellion. Hi, Hayashi-sama, Neji muttered, shooting a last glare at Naruto, before backing off a step and standing beside Hinata. Hayashi nodded, turning instead to the blonde, who was eyeing him warily. Spiky blonde hair, he muttered, sky blue eyes and whisker marks. He almost snorted at the resemblance. The attitude is different, he's much more ballsy and unrefined, but the resemblance is definitely there. Uzumaki Naruto, I presume, he called out, causing the blonde to flinch. I understand you risked your life to save my daughter. Naruto blinked, suddenly put on the spot as he scratched the back of his head. Oh no, I really didn't. I wouldn't say I risked my life. Being hit by a car after pushing someone else out of the way doesn't strike me as accidental, Hayashi replied. On behalf of the Hyuga family, I extend my thanks to you. He looked between the blonde and Neji, before gesturing with his hand to the latter. My nephew, Hyuga Neji, he introduced. I understand you know each other. Naruto bristled at the older teen, Neji eyeing him aloofly, his attitude obviously not having changed since their last encounter. We've met, the blonde growled, to which Neji merely snorted. Hayashi eyed the two carefully. Before shaking his head, I would prefer to thank you better, he admitted. However, I am on a schedule and am currently late. He turned to face Ikagoya. Also, I do believe that I have, to coin a phrase, been had. Ikagoya backpedaled, noting the look of cold hostility in the man's eyes. See come now, Hayashi-sama, he wheedled. Surely you don't believe the words of a common street thug. Oi, Naruto growled, looking pissed. Who you calling a thug? Weasel features. He took a step forwards, causing the weasel of a man to retreat. If you ain't trying to whore out schoolgirls, you're trying to rip people off by selling them stuff your old Yakuza pals dump on you. Ikagoya choked, as the combined glares of the Hyuga Patriarch and Hurricane King caused him to back away. So this was Yakuza property. Hayashi noted coldly. You thought you could divert attention away from you if I bought it. He tapped his coat button. Fortunately, I never had any intention of purchasing this place. I merely had to get a confession out of you for the police. The Hyuga Patriarch nodded grimly at the man's look of horror, before turning on his heel. They should arrive shortly, he noted. I'll see myself out. Shikamaru whistled appreciatively, watching the Hyuga elder march away with dignity and pride, having apparently crippled the man without laying so much as a finger on him. Hell of a guy, the Nara applauded, calm aloof, and didn't even bat an eyelid when Naruto plowed his men down either. You can't just train to do that. He blinked at flash of metal, eyes widening as Ikagoya pulled out a pair of guns from behind his back. Naruto, he yelled out, his shadow growing a pair of red eyes as he lunged forwards. You've ruined me, you little brat, Ikagoya screamed, pointing the guns at Hayashi and Naruto, only for the blonde to leap across the floor and shove the Hyuga elder out of the way of the bullets. The ruined Yakuza lackey could have easily aimed at them in their prone position, and was in fact about to do so, but was foiled as a hand shot out of his shadow, grabbing his coat and pulling him onto his back, causing the bullets to punch holes in the ceiling. Wow, what the fuck? Ikagoya shrieked, attempting to point the guns at the recovering duo, only for his shadow to drag him across the floor, slamming him into objects before dragging him up the wall to the ceiling, the guns falling from limp fingers. AGH, the weasel shrieked, twisting in the confines of the hand, his jacket dragging his arms up. Get me down. Sure enough, the shadow released him, allowing the man to fall, screaming to the unforgiving ground below. A crate hurtled across the floor, skidding slightly, only to collapse as the man fell through it, to land moaning amongst the wreckage. Naruto blinked, eyeing the chaos and confusion, before turning to his friends. who were looking at him in amusement. "You guys," he muttered, earning a snort from Shikamaru as his shadow grew into a gargoyle-like figure, sans wings, with glowing red eyes and the teen's trademark stop sign on the buckle and shoulders. Choji nodded as a large, powerful-looking figure hovered behind him, arms crossed, having tossed the crate under the fallen man. "Didn't think you were the only special one, did you?" Shikamaru muttered, thumbing at his stand, which hovered beside the teen, wrapping around him like some sort of living cloak. "Choji and I got ours a while ago. We didn't think we'd need to use them unless you got into trouble," Choji added. "But well, he did kinda have you by the balls there." Naruto flinched before spiking out and yelling at them continuously, which translated roughly into a grudging "thank you, next time warn a guy," if you understood the teen, but to a stranger sounded oddly reminiscent of a foul-tempered duck from a distance. "That sharp tongue," Hayashi mused, dusting himself off as he listened to the rambling go on. "If what I suspect is true, then he's just like his mother." He slipped a needle into a capsule in his pocket, before topping it and nodding to Neji. "We're going," he ordered. "Again, Naruto-kun, my thanks." Neji bowed, shooting the blonde a critical look as he turned to face the Hyugas. "He's stupid," the older teen allotted, "and certainly crass, but there's no doubt of his bravery." A scream cut through the air, causing the group to turn as one to see where Hinata was, or rather, where she had been. "Hinata," Naruto yelled, dashing to where the girl had been standing and looking around. "Where the heck is she?" Neji stood beside him, eyes scanning the surroundings carefully, catching a blur of motion above them. "He's on the roof," the teen yelled, making for the fire escape, only for Naruto to dash past him. "Team," the blonde roared, his stand appearing, crouching down before propelling itself and its master upwards, leaving a startled Neji in their dust. "You're not getting away, Tebeo." Naruto landed on the roof, his stand disappearing as he blinked, seeing how barren the structure was. He looked around, completely baffled, only for a flash of movement to his right cause him to turn, resulting in the fist aimed for his ear to glaze off the side of his head as he stumbled backwards, arms ready to block. "Sashibaradona, Uzumaki," a confident tone called out, the owner a wild-looking teen in a leather jacket and facial markings. He had Hinata over one shoulder like a sack of potatoes, albeit a valuable one, the other on his hip as he smirked at the blonde. "Remember me." Naruto glared at the teen, eyeing the face for a few moments. Team while he blinked, face going super deformed with dots for eyes. "Dare da Amai." The other teen stumbled, nearly falling off the roof in his shock, legs waving erratically. "What the hell?" he roared. "How the hell could you forget me? Your greatest rival." "My greatest what?" Naruto repeated, sitting on the roof cross-legged as he closed his eyes. Rival, do I even have a rival?" "Kiba," the irate teen roared, teeth like fangs, as he shook a fist at the blonde. "And Yuzuka Kiba. We've been rivals since preschool." Naruto blinked, looking upwards in thought. "Kiba," he muttered. "Why does that name sound so familiar?" He tapped his palm. "Ah, I remember." He yelled, "You're that guy that got caught peeping on the girls' swim team by Anko-sensei. Only cause you screwed everything up." Kiba countered, "If you hadn't kicked the tree I was crouching and I'd never have been caught." Naruto tilted his head. "So it was you up there?" He wondered. "I thought it was some sort of perverted wood sprite." He shrugged, letting out a sigh of relief. "Well, that's a relief." "The hell it is," Kiba yelled back, pupils gone in his rage. "I was in hospital for a month after what that bitch put me through." He pointed at the blonde. "And on top of that you have the balls to pretend not to know me on my return. Hey, I can't help it that I forgot your name." Naruto shot back, looking miffed and embarrassed. "I mean, I hardly know you." "Hardly," Kiba began, before growling and shaking it off. "Whatever, this isn't the time or the place." He scowled as the telltale signs of footsteps coming up the fire escape heralded the arrival of reinforcements. "You wanna save the princess," he taunted, jostling Hinata gently. "Then you gotta find us first." Naruto lunged forwards, hurricane heart appearing behind him, fists at the ready. "You really think I'm letting you get away?" he snarled, only to choke as a fist rammed into his stomach, forcing all the air and a little blood out of his body. "Actually, yes," Kiba muttered, withdrawing his fist as Naruto staggered back, before falling off the roof holding his midriff. The wild teen seemed to pause for a moment, his face hidden, before turning around and leaping off the roof, clearing the 13 feet between the buildings in a single leap, roof hopping into the distance. Hinata secured over his shoulder. "Yahoo!" Kiba yelled, eyeing the Hyuga limo as it pulled away from the factory in his direction. "You pansies think you can catch me in that?" he mocked, grinning fairly as his hair seemed to ruffle, despite the lack of a breeze. "You'll have to try harder than that." And so the main plot begins. What are Kiba's reasons for kidnapping Hinata? How was he able to do so right under the noses of Neji and Naruto? And how will Naruto survive being thrown off a building? Tune in next time. Dictionary. Team, bastard, jerk. Yurusei, shut up. Yer Tebayo. Combination og Jotaro's Yer days and Naruto's Databayo. The Ofama roughly means gimme a break. The latter has no meaning. It has just a way of making the user seem tougher. Dare da amai, literally who are you? For references to this scene, see the first episode of Dragon Half, when Rosario first appears to the king. Next up, Shikamaru. Stand, Cloud 9. User, Nara Shikamaru. Power, C speed, C range, A. Staying, a precision, B learning, A. 1 can manipulate shadows to create portals or to paralyze the enemy. 2 can increase range by using existing shadows. 3 can pull objects into shadows. 4 shadows can take on any shape, but is limited by total area of the original shadow. Naruto gagged as he fell off the roof, the air rushing past whistling through his ears as he fought to breathe. His vision swimming in and out of focus. Damn, he thought, bastard punches like a fricking sledgehammer. He winced as a sudden pain seared through his chest. Think he busted a few ribs there. The teen continued to fall, unable to right himself as he braced for a head-on collision with the ground, wondering how many times death was going to make a move at him before the skeletal bastard was satisfied. Cloud 09. A dark hand shot out from the falling teen's shadow, grabbing him by the ankle and holding him off the ground, the tip of his spiky blonde hair just touching the concrete below. Way too close, Shikamaru gasped, his stand stepping out of the wall, placing the blonde on the floor gently. Good thing my Cloud 9 can pass through shadows or you'd be street pizza. Chaoji patted the wheezing blonde on the back, just as a car door slammed shut, the Hyuga limo peeling out of there at an accelerated pace. Naruto thought he saw a concerned look in Hayashi's eyes, before the tinted windows shut and the car shot off in pursuit of Kiba. Damn it, the blonde coughed, attempting to rise to his feet, refusing Chaoji's offered hand. We gotta get after him. Calm down, Shikamaru muttered, as Chaoji put a restraining hand on the blonde's shoulder. We've no idea where he is. And judging from the way he managed to take you out, this guy is strong. So what are you saying? Naruto asked, his breathing returning to normal thanks to the Ripple training. We should just give up. The police can handle a kidnapping, Naruto, Shikamaru muttered. Believe it or not, this is what they're paid to do. He sighed as the blonde continued to drill holes into him. All right man, you're such a pain in the... Shaking his head, the Nara leaned against the wall of the warehouse, holding his chin with his right hand as the left supported his elbow. If we're going to go after this guy, he muttered, which we most likely are, knowing you, then at the very least we need some intel, so start by telling me what you know about this guy. Naruto frowned, putting a finger to his head as he tried to recall everything the wild man had said. Said his name was Inuzuka Kiba. He recalled he's the perv Anko sensei beat up a while ago. That's a start, Shikamaru admitted, recalling the events in question with a wince, wondering how the hell Anko had managed to keep her job after that. So what else do you know? It sounded like he knew you pretty well. He sweat dropped as Naruto's brow furrowed on concentration. You've forgotten all about him, haven't you? Naruto's grin was all the answer the genius needed. Mendokus, I want a complete combing of the city, Hayashi ordered into his cell phone. Cancel all my appointments and set up a meeting with the chief of police. Neji watched in amazement as his uncle carried out the orders with complete and total calm. It was as if he were arranging a faculty meeting, rather than a search party for his eldest daughter. Don't blame yourself, Neji, Hayashi commented, snapping the younger man out of his daze. None of us could have expected this. If Uzumaki hadn't demolished Hinata-sama's guards, this never would have happened. Neji countered, shooting the men in question a chilling glare. True, Hayashi conceded, but then again, if a teenager can take out 10 full-grown men with guns pointed at his head without blinking, then perhaps a little changing of the guard is in order. The guards winced, lowering their heads in shame and fear as Neji stared at his uncle in disbelief. Hayashi-sama, you surely don't mean to. No, Hayashi cut in. I value my men too highly to cast them aside simply for failing in a task. He nodded reassuringly at the guards. I'm merely considering the idea of bringing Naruto-kun into the equation. Perhaps with 2 stand users protecting her, these attempts on Hinata will cease. That will not be necessary, Neji assured the man, insulted that his uncle was even considering the fact he needed help to carry out his duties. I shall recover Hinata-sama personally. You have my word. Well, this is great, Shikamaru muttered, stepping away from the door of the Inuzuka clinic, which was shut early. Looks like they're out. You think they know what's going on? Chaoji asked, earning a snort from Shikamaru as he shook his head. I doubt it. The Nara muttered, from what my old man tells me, Kiba's mom may have been a rebel in her youth, but she never actually did anything like this. He snorted, waving a hand jokingly, and you can so tell Kiba's a mama's boy. He'd never let her find out about this. Should you really be calling other people a mama's boy, Shika-chan? Naruto mocked, eyeing the Nara with a grin. Last I checked your mom had you on a pretty short leash yourself. Shikamaru flicked the finger at the teen, before shaking his head and sighing. Listen, we'll never get anything done this way. I say we split up and gather intel on Kiba, like where he likes to hang out and stuff. He held up his watch, adjusting the timer, motioning for the others to do the same. We'll meet back at the school in 2 hours, see what you can find. He looked at Chaoji and tried to avoid snacking. Last time we did something like this you spent so long at the udon cart you forgot the time. Chaoji nodded, Naruto tightening his headband as they split up, meet in front of the school gates. The blonde yelled, you better not be late, Shika-chan. Sometimes I really wanna belt him one. The Nara muttered, sweat dropping as the blonde dashed off in a manner he'd, up till now, only associated with Lee. Is he planning on joining the track team? He wondered briefly, before shrugging it off and going his own way. Oh, Naruto. Ikaraku Ayan greeted, smiling as their #1 customer dashed by, only to jog backwards. You're looking busy. Hiya, I am Nichan. The blonde greeted, still jogging on the spot. You haven't seen a wild-looking guy with red markings and a leather jacket go by, have you? Ayan blinked for a moment, before shaking her head. Sorry, not that I recall off the top of my head. She eyed the teen up and down. Are you out for a jog? Can't stay to talk. Ni-chan. Naruto replied, gotta find that kidnapping bastard. Ya nah. What? Kidnapping? Ayan yelped, only for Naruto to dash off. Naruto-kun. Wait a minute, she trailed off as the blonde disappeared in a cloud of dust. What on earth is going on? And that's the story, Chaoji muttered between mouthfuls. So have you seen anyone like that around, Sat-chan? Satsuki shook her head, looking at the large teen in concern. She and Chaoji had been getting along rather well since they met a few days ago. His love of good cooking and gentle demeanor had instantly appealed to her, and it didn't hurt that he reminded her of a massive teddy bear. No, the massive teen replied, sighing as he lowered his bowl. Man, this isn't going too well. He lifted his head as she smiled at him. Hey, you're saying I should try the school? Well, we are meeting up there anyways. He placed some money on the table and smiled. Arigato, Sat-chan. It was great as always. He waved a hand at her. Don't worry, I'll be careful. Shikamaru moaned as he walked around, trying to figure out where best to look for the wild man known only as Kiba. He'd checked around the Inuzuka's neighborhood, asking neighbors if they'd seen the guy recently, or even if they knew where he hung out. This ranged from the arcade Naruto always frequented to the skate parks, where the lazy teen received a warm welcome from the Inuzuka's pack. Red Fangs A. The Nara noted, eyeing the group of punks before him with trepidation and annoyance. Kinda corny if you ask me. That the best he could come up with. Look, he muttered aloud, holding up his hands. I'm not here looking for trouble. All I'm asking is if you guys have seen Kiba around. The hell should we tell you, Baldy? One teen sneered, earning a round of snickers from the others, as they eyed the Nara's widow's peak. We don't rat out on the pack. Mendoku's, Shikamaru muttered, scowling at them in annoyance. Look, simple question. Have you seen him? He shrugged his shoulders. Too hard for you. I could write it out if you want. You're dead. The thugs yelled, ramming their fist at the Nara's face only to yelp as they collided with concrete, their target having disappeared. You should be more careful, Shikamaru advised. Rising out of a shadow behind the teen's broken hands take a lot longer to heal than any other part of the body. How'd you? One of the thugs muttered, before blinking. Why you? You're just like the boss. Shikamaru frowned. What do you mean? He asked. You're saying Kiba can do weird things too. Shut your mouth. Another thug yelled, elbowing the first in the ribs. We don't rat on the pack, and Kiba's top dog around here. He spat at the Nara. I don't care how freaky your ass is, we ain't the kinda dogs that turn their backs on their friends. Shikamaru sighed, shaking his head in resignation. Mendoku's that kidnapping bastard has some pretty loyal friends. What you say? Another thug, clearly the brains, muttered with a frown. Kidnapping. What the hell are you on about? You mean you don't know? Shikamaru asked, raising an eyebrow. Your friend's only gone and kidnapped some uptown girl in order to fight with my pal Naruto. Naruto. The hyperactive punk yelped, as in the Hurricane King Naruto. That Naruto. Hush up. The lead punk muttered, before eyeing the Nara carefully. I think you better tell us the story from the beginning. Hinata woke up to find herself strapped to a chair in a small, deserted building. There were bushes outside, and judging from the sound of laughter it was probably in the middle of the park. How did I get here? She wondered, wincing at the gag around her mouth. What do they want with you awake? A voice called out, causing her to turn her head to espy the form of Kiba leaning against the wall, looking straight at her. You've been asleep for about an hour there. Sorry about all this, but I can't have you running away. He stood up, standing in front of her, his hands on his hips. I'm gonna remove the gag now, so don't scream, got it? He reached out a hand. Hitting girls ain't my thing, but I can't have you calling for help. Hinata winced as the teen pulled the gag down, shaking her head to rid herself of the taste of the fabric. You thirsty? Kiba asked, holding up a bottle of water, pouring some into a flask cup and holding it to her lips. The Hyuga heiress gulped the cool liquid down gratefully, before eyeing her captor warily. What do you want with me? She asked, feeling oddly calm. All things considered, if it's money, you should know my father isn't one to buckle under threats. Money's cool, but kidnapping people for it ain't on my agenda, Kiba muttered, waving a hand dismissively. And you don't need to worry about your virtue, none. I ain't after that either. He clenched his fist and grinned fairly. What I want is him. Hinata blinked as the teen seemed to tremble with excitement, his canines appearing to lengthen, before checking himself and calming down. Gotta hand it to that blonde bastard, Kiba muttered, eyeing her up and down. He may have a lousy memory, but he's got damn good taste in women. He snorted and shrugged mockingly. Dunno what you see in him, miss, but I'll tell you right now, he's as thick as a brick. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, looking at the teen in confusion as he nodded. Ono ... How do you know Naruto-kun? Simple, Kiba muttered, kneeling down across from her with a sigh. He's my rival. He snorted at the look of confusion on her face. Since we first started preschool together, the two of us have been butting heads like wild bulls. We'd beat the shit. He stumbled over his words as he looked at her. Rough each other up almost every day, compete against each other in virtually every field. He held up his hand to count: track, wrestling, sumo. Heck, we even tried competing for the Prankster King title, only for that idiot to nail it by covering the entire front of North Konohagakuen in graffiti in one night. Hinata's eyes widened, remembering that day rather well, as it had caused quite a bit of distress for the staff at the sight of their precious academy looking like something out of a hip-hop video. Not that the bastard remembers, Kiba muttered with a scowl. He's got a memory like a frigging sieve. If it don't include ramen or those stupid gashapon capsules, he's got no interest. Hinata looked at the teen in confusion as he ranted on about how thick-headed that bastard was, wondering to herself if it was some form of jealousy that was driving the teen. Anyways, Kiba muttered, calming down, he seems pretty interested in you, so I'm using you as bait to draw him out. What are you going to do to him? Hinata asked, wincing as the teen grinned fairly again, clenching a fist tightly. Finish things once and for all, Kiba replied. We'll see who the top dog in Konoha really is. So that's what's going on, Shikamaru muttered, having listened to Kiba's pack story. So this is just one drawn-out pissing competition between two idiots. Hey, the loud punk yelled, who you callin' an idiot? The apparent leader of the pack shook his head, silencing the louder punk by slapping him upside the head. That's the way things are, he admitted. You're saying Kiba's kidnapped some dame to get Uzumaki to come out. That's the way it seems, the Nara replied. He did it down at the old warehouse district. Even tossed my pal off a roof. Damn. The loud punk winced. That don't sound like the boss at all. The quiet punk nodded, turning to the Nara authoritatively. Kiba's a hothead, but he's not the type to kill someone just for pissing him off. He shrugged, but ever since that guy showed up, he shivered. I knew that little prick was trouble. Hold up, Shikamaru cut in, is there another party involved? The punk clammed up, shaking his head. I said way too much already. He muttered, any more and my cred's in the gutter. He turned his back on the Nara. We'll keep an eye out for Kiba, but we ain't turning him over to the cops. Effing pigs, a loud punk added, only to receive another blow upside the head, the group skating away from the exhausted Nara. So there's someone else involved, the Nara noted. Interesting. It was a rather defeated-looking group that gathered before the gates of East Konohagakuen, Naruto, and Choji having found no leads at all. Shikamaru's unveiling of a third party only complicated matters further. Calm down, the Nara assured the irate blonde. After watching him ram his head against the gate a few times, from what his gang told me, Kiba won't hurt Hinata in any way, so there's little to worry about on that front. He sighed, shaking his head. On the other hand, the fact a third party is involved only complicates matters further. For all we know, he hired Kiba to kidnap her. Still, Naruto muttered, going this far just to challenge me. He shook his head. From what little I remember of Dog Breath, he isn't the type to take hostages. The problem, Choji muttered between chips, is that since he's been gone so long, we know next to nothing about him. And then there's the fact he cleared a rooftop in a single leap, Shikamaru added grimly. If that isn't a sign of standability, then I don't know what is. Naruto moaned and gripped his head in his hands. Derek, why couldn't the flea-bitten bastard just challenge me like a normal idiot? Naruto-kun, a familiar voice called out, causing the trio to turn to take in the confused form of Lee, dressed in his usual green tracksuit. That's odd, I didn't know you had club activities. I don't, Naruto replied simply, we just decided to meet up here to discuss. He blinked, before eyeing the older teen hopefully. Senpai, have you seen a wild man named Kiba running around recently? Kiba-kun, the older teen replied, blinking in confusion, the youthful fellow who used to fight with you at break over the last noodle bread. That was him, Naruto muttered, dimly recalling the fight with a flinch. I thought he looked familiar. He shook himself and looked at the older teen. Dark. Forget that. Have you seen him? Why? Lee asked, looking between the trio in confusion. What's going on? I see, Lee muttered, hand on his chin as he nodded to Shikamaru's recounting. That does indeed sound strange. So have you seen or heard anything? Shikamaru asked. We've turned up all the usual stones and struck zilch. Please tell me you have some clue. Lee shook his head apologetically. Sorry, but I'm afraid I've been busy with track and training, Naruto-kun, he replied, nodding to the teen. I was supposed to tell you lessons were on for this afternoon, but I'm guessing we'll be missing them. You mean you're gonna help us, senpai? Naruto asked hopefully, earning a nod from the teen. Yada. Now we can cover more area. While that is true, Lee cut in, calming the blonde down, I was thinking of asking a friend for help. He smiled at the trio. You see, his stand is well suited for this type of situation. Another stand user, Shikamaru wondered, quirking an eyebrow in interest. Before shaking his head, Mendoku's they're popping up all over the place. I've known this guy for a while now, Lee explained, as he walked through the gate. He's not very sociable, and quite frankly doesn't care for people much. But there's little that goes on in East Konoha he doesn't know about. So where is he? Naruto asked, eager to get the quest underway. Come on, senpai. We gotta find Hinata-chan. Patience, Naruto-kun, Lee said calmingly. Let me finish my track run and I'll take you right to him. He's busy around this time as well, so he won't speak to us even if we go straight to him. He's a member of this school too, Chaoji asked, earning a nod from the older teen. Anyone we know? Possibly, Lee admitted with a smile, eyeing the trio carefully. He is in your year. Mendoku's, Shikamaru muttered, staring at the walls of the corridor in annoyance. It's spring break and I'm stuck inside school. Have I told you how much I hate you, Naruto? I love you too, Shika-chan. Naruto shot back, dodging a swipe from the teen, before turning his attention to Lee. So senpai, you known this guy long? We met not long after I transferred here, Lee replied. I encountered his stand and we got to talking. He nodded at the trio, shrugging slightly. He's not the most talkative of people, but he knows a lot more than he lets on. They continued in silence, save for the sound of munching chips and footsteps, until reaching a door with the words, Insect Club across the doorframe. One of these guys is a stand user, Naruto muttered, looking disgusted. Ugh, I don't even want to think about what this guy's stand looks like. If I see a giant cockroach with a bad temper, I'm callin' Will Smith, Chaoji muttered, hiding his chips where they couldn't be seen with a shudder. Seriously, I hate bugs. Oh, grow up, Shikamaru muttered, though on the inside he was a little grossed out. If he can tell us where this bastard is, I'll put up with anything. Lee nodded, before knocking on the door of the clubroom, a quiet enter allowing him to open the door further. The room was a renovated science lab, rows of pinned insects and live specimens running around in specially designed exhibits. Lee-senpai, a quiet voice called out, and 3 others. The group turned as one to a lone figure in a school uniform, complete with coat, the collar turned up to hide the face. He wore a cold mask over his face and his hair was set in bizarre dreads. A pair of thick, dark glasses covered his face, and he was holding a magnifying glass over a pair of tweezers, which held a twitching beetle captive. Uzumaki Naruto, age 15, going on 6'3 feet. The figure noted, not looking away from his specimen. Orphan living alone, formerly boarded with Umino Iruka, currently most feared adversary of the mafia elements infecting Konoha, developed stand powers 2 weeks prior to spring break. Naruto blinked, looking to Lee questioningly, only for the older teen to shake his head in denial. If Lee-senpai didn't say anything, the blonde wondered, eyeing the figure at the desk warily. Then how'd this guy know all that? Kamichi Chaoji, the teen continued, age 15, going on 6 feet, currently living with parents who run a snack shop, gained stand powers after an attempted mafia murder, currently in a relationship with Yotsuba Satsuki from Mahora Gakuen. Chaoji blushed as the other 3 turned to look at him, Naruto's eyes telling the teen he was in for some ribbing later, only for the silent teen to speak up again. Nara Shikamaru, age 15, going on 6 feet, with an extra 2 inches if you count the ponytail. He set the beetle into a tray, Before placing said tray in a case, lives with parents who run local pharmacy is pressured to succeed as a result. Gains stand powers after attempted mafia murder and is incredibly lazy. The teen looked up at last, eyeing the trio and Lee from behind those incredibly dark spectacles. "Aburame Shino," he greeted, bowing his head slightly. "As I said before, I met Shino-kun shortly after transferring," Lee explained to the rather disturbed-looking trio. "He's not the type to talk much about anything, but he's got a way of finding things out." "So it would seem," Shikamaru muttered, eyeing the Aburame curiously. "I'm guessing your stand is the secret behind your knowledge." Shino didn't reply, causing the Nara to sweat drop. "Mendokus, you really aren't talkative." "My apologies," Shino replied, "but I find that interacting with people can be tedious, so I prefer to avoid it as much as possible." "Unsociable bastard," Naruto muttered, staring at the back of the Aburame's head with a shiver. "I heard that," Shino pointed out, causing the blonde to jump, "and I don't really care what you think of my social habits." He turned to Lee. "I understand you want information concerning Inuzuka Kiba's whereabouts." Lee nodded, ignoring the look of shock on the trio's faces as their jaws hit the ground. "He disappeared with a hostage in tow, challenging Naruto-kun to get her back." He nodded towards the blonde. "We believe he won't hurt her, but since a third party is involved, you are concerned that their intentions are not so inclined." Shino finished, earning a nod from the older teen. "You understand that my assistance will not come without a price." "The hell?" Naruto called out. "We have to pay. We're trying to rescue someone and you're making a profit out of it." "Do not mistake me," Shino assured the blonde. "I have no intention of charging you money. Let's just say you all owe me a favor." "That all?" Naruto asked, exhaling with relief. "Fine then." Uzumaki Naruto always keeps his word. He grabbed Choji and Shikamaru by their collars, the duo trying to unsuccessfully sneak away before their friend could rope them in. "These guys too." "Oi," Shikamaru yelped, swiping at the blonde. "Don't go making promises for other people." "It's done then," Shino deadpanned, ignoring the irate look on the Nara's face. "I shall contact you in an hour with my findings." "Come on," Shikamaru snorted. "Your stand may be suited for reconnaissance and the like, but I highly doubt it can cover an entire city in just an hour." "Nothing is impossible," Shino replied solemnly, a low droning filling the air, the trio stepping back in horror as a massive swarm of insects flew out of his sleeves, especially where my alien ant farm is concerned. "It's getting pretty late," Kiba muttered, staring out at the sky. "I wonder if Ramen for Brains managed to find a clue." He turned to the bound Hyuga, frowning slightly as he noticed her distress. "Would you relax already?" he muttered. "The second the bastard gets here, you're free to go." "That isn't what we agreed, Inuzuka," a voice called out, causing the teen to whip around to face a raven-haired teen leaning against the wall. "In fact, that actually negates our deal." "What the hell are you doing here?" Kiba snarled, hackles rising as he eyed the teen warily. "I told you, no Naruto, and the deal's off." "Relax, Inuzuka," the figure droned, holding up a hand. "I'm just here to remind you of our bargain." Kiba growled, looking from the shadowy figure to Hinata, who was looking panicked. "What do ya want with her anyways?" he asked. "This better not be some sort of prostitution scam." "I assure you," the teen muttered, sounding disgusted, "that selling the Hyuga girl is the furthest thing from my intentions, and before you get technical, I am not interested in her in that way either." "That voice?" Hinata wondered, staring at the shadowy teen in confusion. "Where have I heard that voice before?" "Eh?" Kiba wondered, darting a hand out to the side to catch something between his fingers. "The hell kinda bug is this?" he wondered, staring at the oddly designed insect as it buzzed angrily at him. "Leave it," the figure muttered. "It is of little consequence." He stepped back, turning to eye the Inuzuka. "Remember, win or lose, the Hyuga comes with me." "You think he's dead?" Naruto wondered, leaning down to look into Shino's spectacles. The stoic teen had ceased talking altogether, with the exception of the odd buzzing noise and random twitching of the facial muscles. "Wonder why he wears these things," the blonde stated, reaching for the teen's glasses. A second later he was wincing as a surprising strong grip threatened to snap his wrist in two. "Don't," Shino muttered, "ever touch the glasses." He released the blonde, just as the swarm of insects returned, retreating up his sleeves like hornets returning to the nest. Inuzuka, Kiba, and Hyuga Hinata are in Konoha General Park, in a small, dilapidated building hidden off from the main path. He nodded to a stunned Shikamaru. "As you hypothesized, a third party was involved, but I could not identify him." The Nara whistled. "You weren't kidding," he muttered. "How'd you do it?" "My alien ant farm is a mass-bodied stand," Shino explained. "However, it operates like a hive mind, meaning it responds to my orders." He held up a finger, a sole insect landing on it, wings trilling. "It can track people by scent, and its sense of hearing enables it to use a type of sonar to pick up sounds. No wonder you knew so much about us, Chaoji deduced. You had one of those things covering everyone in school. I like to stay on top of things, Shino responded. So when Mizuki-sensei was fired, I decided to keep an eye on his activities and things grew from there. He nodded at the bug, which flew over to hover in front of Naruto. My stand will lead you to where you need to go, the stoic teen stated, turning back to his collection. Now if you don't mind, please shut the door on your way out. Naruto grinned, charging towards the doorway, followed by the bug and his friends, Arigato Shino. He yelled out, I owe you one. Shino waited until the sound of footsteps faded away, before pulling out a notebook and beginning to write in it. A most interesting group of people, the Aburame noted. Perhaps things will become more interesting around here. Short, I know, but necessary to get the story moving. Shino's stand may not seem very original, but if you think about it, it's not all that different from Fatty's Harvest, so I figured there wasn't much point in changing it. Also, for those who didn't get the reference, Cloud 9 refers to the song by Puddle of Mud. Shino's stand, Alien Ant Farm. User, Aburame Shino. Power, D speed, C range, A. Staying, A precision, B learning, C. 1 takes the form of millions of miniature beetles to perform reconnaissance. 2 remote controlled, so it can be used at long range. 3 parasite bugs can drain opponents of their vitality or inject with fluids. 4 can track targets over vast distances. 5 can create a physical form out of bugs, but sacrifices range to do so. Still no news? Hayashi asked, marching out of the Konoha police station and eyeing his nephew. The younger man shook his head, earning a sigh from his uncle. It cannot be helped then. The police are obviously incompetent if they cannot even locate a teenager. He walked towards the car, getting in alongside Neji as the chauffeur pulled away. Perhaps we should inquire into Naruto-kun's activities, the elder Hyuga commented, earning a look from his nephew. What makes you think that? Neji paused briefly. That Yankee has found any better leads than the police, or even our own search efforts. Call it a hunch, Hayashi muttered, recalling a certain other blonde he knew, a rather educated hunch. Kiba growled deep in his throat as he eyed his watch, the sun having set an hour ago, the streetlights outside flickering on. Shit, he muttered, don't tell me he actually died falling off the roof. Kiba, a loud, obnoxious voice bellowed, actually causing the dirt to fall from the ceiling. Get your kidnapping ass out here, team. The teen blinked, before grinning fairly and walking over to his hostage. He waved his arm once and the bindings fell, earning a gasp from the girl. Just stay close and don't try anything funny. He warned, I don't like hitting women, but if I have to knock you out again I will. Hinata nodded, wincing as the teen locked one of her arms behind her back, only to suddenly spin inwards, using his own center of gravity to hurl him over her shoulder. The hell? Kiba yelped, as the female Hyuga dashed out the doorway. Why didn't anyone tell me she knew freaking judo? I have to get to Naruto-kun. Hinata thought, dashing through the trees in desperation. I can't let him get hurt again. Most impressive, a familiar voice called out, causing her to stop as the shadowy teen from earlier stepped out from behind a tree. You wouldn't think a gentle soul like yourself would know any martial arts, even for self-defense. Hinata flinched, before moving into a basic Bagua Zhang stance, so as to better use the teen's force against him, only for the figure to chuckle. Come now, Hyuga, he stated, coming into her range of vision. Is that any way to act in front of a classmate? Hinata blinked, taking in the tall, handsome features of the teen dressed in a North Konoha Gakuin uniform, his raven-haired locks reminding her of some sort of bird. Uchiha Sasuke-san, she wondered aloud, utterly confused as the teen clapped his approval. I don't understand. Sasuke finished, shaking his head. Well, why would you? It's not like kidnapping's a common thing nowadays. He shrugged. That said, I must admit you handled things within Yuzuka rather well. Guess idiots are idiots even if they are stand users. Hinata blinked, staring at the Uchiha in shock. Kiba-san is a stand user, she wondered, and Uchiha-san, you know about stands. Quite well, Sasuke replied with a nod. Enough to know you possess a stand as well, quite a powerful one at that. He sighed and shook his head. Such a shame you lack the drive to summon it at a whim. He locked gazes with her, but then I suppose that's to my advantage. Hinata shivered, moving into a better stance as he stepped forwards. Don't come near me, she warned. I don't want to hurt you, Uchiha-san, but I. There was a flash of fire, and the girl's clothes disintegrated, the shock bringing her to her knees as she feebly tried to cover herself. I detest unnecessary violence, Sasuke's voice called out, causing her to look up into a pair of red eyes with spinning black tomos. So I'll have you sleep for now. Hinata tried to look away, only to fall limply onto the grass, out cold. Naruto-kun. Naruto shivered as a sudden jolt went through him, looking round in concern as Shino's stand paused next to him. Hinata. He wondered aloud, looking around desperately for the girl. Hinata. What's up? Shikamaru muttered, coming up behind the teen with the others. You see something? Naruto shook his head. I thought I heard Hinata a moment ago. He muttered, looking around, but that can't be right. Maybe we should split up, Lee suggested. With more people we can cover a wider area. At that moment all the lights flashed on, revealing them to be on the football pitch of the park. Oi, Uzumaki, Kiba called out, standing atop one of the goalposts. About time you got here. Naruto growled and stepped forward. Yero. He growled, where's Hinata? Keep your shirt on. Kiba barked back, thumbing towards the woods. She ran off into the park somewhere. You can pick her up later. He leered down at the blonde. We got business to take care of. Naruto growled and went to step forward, only for Lee to place a hand on his shoulder. Naruto-kun, the older teen whispered, it would be best if we stuck to original plan. He eyed the wild-looking teen carefully. While I understand your desire to punish this guy, finding Hinata has priority, and there's no sign of the other kidnapper. Naruto bristled, not liking the idea of backing down in the slightest, but concerned for Hinata won over his desire to pound Kiba's skull in. Wakata Tebeo, he muttered, shooting a glare at Kiba before turning on his heel. Hey, Kiba yelled, glaring at the blonde as he turned his back on him. Hell do ya think you're going? He stamped on the bars. We got us a fight to settle. I don't play with strays, Naruto shot back, glaring over his shoulder, especially not with wild mutts that uses hostages. He spat at the teen, before turning his back on him. I'll deal with you after I check on Hinata, so sit right there, Wan-chan. Kiba bristled, the blonde's attitude and the nickname having set off a time bomb in the feral teen's mind. Hugh, he muttered, trembling in anger as his nails dug into his palms, you're fucking dead. Naruto flinched, before shoving Lee out of the way and diving to the side, several cuts raining up his arm, stopping short of the sleeve. Fast? The blonde wondered, way faster than Mizuki-sensei. He eyed the shadowy form as it appeared through the dust. So that's your stand ability. Standing where Kiba should have been was a large, werewolf-type creature, the feet elongated and jointed at the pads. Kiba had shed his jacket, revealing he wore a type of mesh shirt that was straining against tight, enhanced muscles. His hands had grown and developed a set of razor-sharp claws, his hair bursting out behind him in veritable mane of red-tipped white hair. As with Mizuki, the face was still mostly Kiba's, but the teen's markings were now more menacing, and he now supported a pair of wolf-like ears at the sides of his head. You bastard, Kiba snarled, hunched over in anger as he glared ferally at the blonde. You think you can just walk out of here like that? He lunged forwards, raking his claws at Naruto's flank, only for the teen to sidestep, resulting in a tree being slashed up instead. You're next, Kiba yelled, clenching his clawed fist at Naruto. I'll rip you to shreds. Jesus, Shikamaru yelped, falling on his ass in shock at the sight of the lycanthropic teen's attack. That's Kiba. It would appear so, Lee commented. I heard rumors that certain stands are bound to their user's body, meaning they can affect the user's body in a number of ways. He nodded at the other two. Mizuki-sensei possessed a similar stand, from what Naruto tells me. Chaoji looked between the two combatants, concern for Naruto and fear of Kiba's appearance battling within him. Before Lee set a hand on his shoulder, we cannot worry about them now. Our first priority is to locate Hinata-san. He nodded toward the combatants. Naruto-kun can take care of himself. He's fought this type of stand before after all. Lee's right, Shikamaru muttered, his stand appearing behind him as he got to his feet. Besides, my Cloud9's better suited for reconnaissance anyways. The gargoyle-like creature sank into a shadow and disappeared, leaving the Nara on his own. Let's split up, he ordered. Chaoji, you take Shino's bug, since your stand isn't a reconnaissance type. Lee nodded, before holding up a hand and shooting out a trail of bandages, which wrapped around the wrists of the other two. So we can find our way back, he explained, before dashing off into the undergrowth, Shikamaru and Chaoji following suit. Yer Tebeo, Naruto muttered, eyeing the lycanthrope carefully, first a tiger and now a wolf. He shook his head, ruffling his hair in annoyance. What's next? 100-story kitsune with a bad temper. I hope you don't think I'm anything like that poser Mizuki, Kiba called out, pointing at the blonde with one clawed finger. That bastard liked to skulk around in the shadows. I take my enemies head on. Glad to hear it, Naruto replied with a smirk. If all you damn lycanthropes fought the same I'd get bored. Team, Kiba growled, before appearing behind the blonde, claws aimed directly at his jugular. Don't go underestimating me. Muda, Kiba soared backwards, head tilted to the side from the force of Hurricane Heart's fist. He plowed into the pitch and continued backwards, before flipping to all fours and dragging his claws in, leaving trenches in the ground. Not bad, Naruto muttered, his stand hovering behind him. Most people go down for the count after a blow like that to the jaw. Kiba spat, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, the taste of his own blood exciting him. I told you, he mocked, don't underestimate me. The lycanthrope blurred into motion, seemingly apparating to Naruto's right, only to strike from the left as Hurricane Heart swung into motion. Naruto winced as his flank was swiped, leaving trails of blood, the lichen blurring away again. Kyuso, the blonde winced, bastard's 10 times stronger than Mizuki, he noted, and this speed is he faster than senpai. Daoshita, Uzumaki, Kiba yelled out, circling around the teen, lost for words, ready to piss your pants. Pray to God. How about begging for mercy? He leaped upwards, coming down on the teen whilst his afterimages attacked from the sides. Awarida. Naruto stood in the middle of the barrage, eyeing the incoming wall of fangs and claws with an air of calm, before exhaling. Yer tabayo, he muttered, you really are serious, aren't you? He cricked his neck joints, guess I'd better do the same. The teen inhaled, his chest seeming to expand outwards as his lungs filled. As the blood surged throughout his body, a slight ripple shot through the grass, causing it to bend away from him as if a wind were blowing. His eyesight sharpened to the point he could note the faint blurring around the edges of all but one of the attackers, the one coming from above. There you are, he roared, leaping up to meet the attack head-on, surprising the lycanthrope with how high he could jump as his stand went into motion. Muta. Kiba went sailing for the second time that night, landing on all fours again as Naruto touched down, barely bending his knees from the leap. Bibakana. The Inuzuka wondered aloud. I had to be at least 6 feet above him. He barely bent for that leap but managed to reach me in midair. Naruto, he muttered, blood running down his face as he stared at his opponent. What are you? Your worst fucking nightmare, Naruto responded, coat flapping around him in the breeze as he walked towards the lycanthrope. And guess what, we're just getting started. Shikamaru cursed as he navigated through the woods, looking for a sign of Hinata. He cursed his negligence in bringing a flashlight. But when Naruto and Lee started running, he just knew there wouldn't be time to dash home for one. Endure lecture about staying out late and try to find the idiots in the dark. Mendocuse, he muttered, as a pair of red eyes blinked at him from within the hollow of a tree. At least this darkness gives me more area to cover. He blinked as the smell of burnt leaves caught his nose, leading him to a small clearing, where a few embers were still burning. Someone forget to put out their ashes. The Nara wondered, stamping on a smoldering piece, only to blink as something caught his attention. Isn't this, he wondered, lifting the fabric up, a soul button hanging from it? Don't tell me. He looked around, spotting the fabric from a skirt here, a smoldering shoe heel, and, to his embarrassment, the surprisingly complete right half of a bra, slightly scorched. A D cup, he wondered bleedingly, before shaking his head in admonishment as he fought down the images. Damn it. This isn't the time. He reached down to the remains, fighting down a flush as he looked for a name, finding the remains on the back strap. Hyuhin, the Nara muttered, shaking his head as disbelief. Mendocuse. Better let senpai know. Lee was dashing through the woods, crying out for Hinata at random intervals. His bandages had positioned themselves behind him, and were unraveling unhindered as he made his way through the woods. Hinata-san. The teen called out, only to blink as a red-eyed gargoyle head rose out of the shadows before him. Aha. So the enemy is a stand user. He leapt forward, the upper body of Kung Fu generation forming. Fists at the ready, prepare yourself. Matt, the shadow creature yelled, using Shikamaru's voice as it attempted to shield itself. It's me, senpai. I'm using my stand to talk to you. Lee blinked, looking oddly disappointed as his stand's fist halted a hair's breadth from Cloud9's face. Shikamaru-kun. He wondered, did you find something? The gargoyle sighed, before nodding. Hi, follow your bandages back to me. I already let Chaoji know and he's on his way. The red eyes locked onto the older teen, looking troubled. This isn't good, senpai. I think the third party got her. Lee sighed and shook his head. All right, he replied. I'll meet up with you in a few seconds. With the two left, Cloud9 sinking back into the shadows, and Lee dashing towards the lazy teen as fast as he could. Naruto-kun, he thought worriedly. How badly is he going to take this? Naruto dodged to the side, using the ripple training to speed up his reaction time as he listened for the sound of Kiba's footfalls to let him know where the bastard was. A swift combination of this, zoom punches and hurricane heart covering the rear ensured the lycanthrope couldn't sneak up on him anymore. Damn it, Kiba yelped, rising to his feet after being knocked down again. How the hell do you keep finding me? What's the matter? Naruto mocked. Did you piss your pants? Wanna pray to God? Feeling like hunkering down and begging for mercy, he stalked towards the Inuzuka with a smirk. All those gotta be seeming pretty tempting to you right now. Kiba bristled, before grinning fairly, laughing as he shook his head. Yeah, fuck yeah. he cackled, grinning insanely at the blonde. Now this is how it should be. Wouldn't be any fun if it were too damn easy. He charged forwards, the wind tearing around him as his claws raked the ground. "I've been saving this for ya," he bellowed, claws glistening as he swiped horizontally. "Kyurii. Garuzanku-geki." Naruto moved to dodge, only to blink as he was pulled towards the lycanthrope, Kiba's second set of claws rising to meet him. Wind pressure. He realized. He swiped so fast it left a vacuum, drawing his opponent closer to him. He winced as he felt himself slide forwards. Can't slip away. He crossed his arms as Hurricane Heart appeared before him. "Oh fuck, this is gonna hurt." The fanged hurricane slammed into the blonde, sending him soaring, stand and all, the gauntlets riddled with slash marks as blood sprayed from Naruto's arms and neck. Kiba slid to a halt 5 feet away as Naruto landed on his shoulder. "Hard? Not bad, eh?" The Inuzuka growled. "Been practicing that ever since I got this ability." He tilted his head slightly. "Never actually thought I'd have to use it on you, but..." He shrugged. "Ah well, you still alive down there?" Naruto replied by spitting out grass and blood, wiping his mouth as the cuts on his neck healed, aided by the Hammond training. "Pretty damn good," he admitted. "Lost my damn footing there ... that your ace is it." He got to his feet, breathing a little heavy as he tried to keep up the rhythm. "Sorry to say I haven't got one to back it up." The two eyed each other, neither prepared to give an inch towards the other on this battle of wills. "This is kinda exciting," Naruto muttered, spitting off to the side, kinda like one of those old westerns Iruka-sensei loves. "Draw Pilgrim," Kiba agreed, pretending to fire a gun with his clawed hand, or something like that anyway. "Yeah, that's it," Naruto agreed. "Only problem is, the good guys always won in those movies, which means the outcome of this match just got decided." He pointed at Kiba with a smirk on his face as he looked the lycanthrope in the eyes. "Hope you're ready for it, Kiba," he warned, "cause I'm gonna rip that damn pelt off you and use it as a bathroom rug." Kiba smirked, cracking his joints in anticipation. "You're welcome to try a loser," he mocked. "But then, maybe you want another helping of my last attack." "Try me," Naruto shot back, giving the lycanthrope the finger. "I ain't going down until you do." Kiba snorted, glaring into his opponent's eyes with a smirk. "You're a fool," he muttered, before moving into a stance. "But then again, I'm not much better." Naruto grimaced, feeling blood slide down his arm as his wounds continued to bleed. "I may be bragging," he noted, "but that last attack's a lot better than I let on." He grimaced as he sensed Hurricane Heart's hands just under his clothing. "If I hadn't used my stand to guard my vitals." The teen eyed his opponent warily, trying to figure out how to come out on top. "That vacuum of his negates any real defense," he noted, "and since he can rush in behind it, putting up a guard is pointless." He grit his teeth in irritation. "Damn it. If only I had a little more time." His fists clenched, his stand mimicking him as he felt his joints pop. He blinked as a faint humming reached his attention, gazing out the corner of his eyes at the drilled gauntlets adorning his stand's wrists. "They're rotating," he wondered, only for them to stop as he held his breath. Wait a minute, they never did that before. He blinked, as he recalled how he'd been able to hear everything during their last exchange, the Hammond enhancing his senses, making Kiba's movements through the air as audible as a gale. "Wait a minute," he muttered, enhanced senses aside. "Hammond shouldn't grant me control over wind currents." He eyed the gauntlets again, an idea forming in his head. Could it be? "You ready to die?" Kiba yelled out, launching forwards with the same swiping motion from before. Garuzanku-geki. Naruto grit his teeth and inhaled, sharpening his senses as he lunged forwards, Hurricane Heart jabbing upwards, the drill-like gauntlets rotating wildly. The two blows collided, only for both teens to gape in shock as a massive wind picked up between them, their last shared thought being "holy she." Before everything went white, the three allies reconvened where not far from where Shikamaru was, Choji panting for breath as the bug hovered behind him. "So what did you find, Shikamaru-kun?" Lee asked, blinking in confusion as he took in the smell of burnt leaves, a fire. "More than that," Shikamaru muttered, holding up the remains of a bra with an embarrassed look on his face. "Shikamaru-kun," Lee yelled, flushing furiously and making an odd pose, as if to ward away the lingerie. "Have you no shame? Put that down." "Didn't know you were into that, Shikamaru," Choji noted, looking at his friend disappointedly. "I always thought you considered girls annoying." "Bakas," the Nara spiked, looking highly vexed. "I'm not holding this thing cause I want to." He held it up so they could see it was burnt, someone torched it, and quite a few other things too. Lee blinked, taking in the scene more clearly, noting the remains of a shoe and the rest of a uniform with a wince. "You don't think that?" "I'm afraid so," Shikamaru muttered, tossing the remains of the brassiere to the embarrassed teen for him to read the remains for the name tag. It's faint, but her name's on it. Can't be too many girls with names that start with Hin and Hyu in this town. A D cup. Lee wondered numbly, staring at the article in shock as Shikamaru's face faltered. No way, Chaoji exclaimed, eyes widening. I've never seen one this close. He blinked suddenly. How do ya think she was hiding them like that? With that baggy school jumper, I suppose, Shikamaru muttered, getting to his feet with a growl. And can we change the subject? Please, not a breast man, I take it, Shikamaru, Chaoji wondered, causing Lee to flush and the Nara to glare at him in annoyance. Just saying, I prefer legs myself. For your sake, that better not be a food joke, Shikamaru muttered, glaring at his friend before sighing and turning to Lee, who was going an interesting shade of magenta anyway. Tastes and preferences aside, should we let Naruto know about this? Of course, Lee insisted. Naruto-kun is worried about Hinata-san. Even the slightest piece of information could help. True, Shikamaru muttered, but if we tell him about this, he shivered at the thought of Naruto and his stand going on a rampage. Newspaper articles with the words "the end is nigh" and "the destroyer is manifest" hovering behind him. Good point, Lee muttered, somehow catching his Kohai's sentiment, knowing all too well that once Naruto's temper got going, there was little that could stop him. Let's try to keep this to ourselves if we can help it. An explosion rocked the park, the two nearly losing their footing as they grabbed each other for support. Choji falling over and grabbing a tree trunk for dear life. What was that? Lee yelped, looking around for danger, his stand at the ready. An earthquake. Worse, Shikamaru muttered, his own reappearing behind him as he looked towards the football pitch. I sent my stand to keep an eye on Naruto after I called you. He shivered at the thought. Whatever that was, it happened because of those two idiots. Naruto groaned as he tried to sit up, wincing as his aching frame attempted to mutiny as a result of the harsh treatment it had just undergone. Yer Tebeo, he muttered, didn't think I'd come out of that one without a scratch. But this is something else. He winced as he got to one knee, the other leg trembling as he put weight on it. Haven't felt this bad since I took on that Zabuza bastard years ago. Momochi Zabuza had been a Yakuza lackey with quite the reputation in Japan, who had recently been seen in Konoha. Some said he'd always take a piece of his opponent with him after a fight, others that he fought like the devil himself. Naruto had met the man during a bust-up one day, and the memory still gave him shivers. Flashback. You still alive, Gaki? The bandaged figure asked, his deep voice menacing, yet at the same time reassuring. You're certainly tougher than the pussies we've got working for us. Naruto, barely into his teens, grit his teeth and glared at the man as he held his gut, where a well-aimed punch had taken him down. Scattered around him were the remains of the Yakuza's lackeys, all curled up and unconscious, all bleeding from various wounds. Team, the blonde snarled, clawing at the pavement as he tried to get up, glaring at Zabuza all the while. I'm gonna get you for that. That's so? Zabuza asked, squatting down before the teen with a lazy expression on his face. In that case, you're gonna have to get stronger, a lot stronger. Then I'll get stronger, Naruto snapped, wincing as his ribs popped. I'll train and come back stronger than ever, even if it takes me 10 years. Zabuza eyed him for a moment, before chuckling darkly and ruffling the kid's hair, picking up his suit coat from the crate as he walked away. I'm looking forward to it, Gaki. End flashback. Hell of a thing to be thinking about in the midst of a fight, the blonde noted with a snort, shaking his head to clear it as he looked about for Kiba. Oi, Wen-chan, he called out mockingly, you still alive and ready to go? Or did you roll over and play dead? He gazed across the small crater that had formed as a result of the fight, and the trench that led away from it, where a prone white form lay on its back. It shuddered briefly, before lifting its head to level a lupine smirk at him. Like hell I'd roll over, Kiba grit out, wincing as his body ached all over, getting into the same position as Naruto. This is starting to get good. I'll say, Naruto admitted, grinning like the fight junkie he was, though I'm guessing after that you're as exhausted as I am. In the crap, Kiba shot back. I can tell you're raring to go, Baka, you're barely out of breath. He thumbed at himself. In this form my senses are 10 times keener than that of an actual wolf, and I recover from injuries a lot faster than normal too. Just like in the damn movies, Naruto muttered, staggering to his feet, and me without any silver. Don't compare me to some Hollywood has-been. Kiba snorted, rising to his feet as well. And you're a fine one to talk. The hell kind of body you got there. Naruto eyed one of the cuts on his arm as it healed, albeit slowly, with each passing breath, passing it off as part of the Hammond training. Why don't you come and find out? he dared, waving at the lupine teen to approach. Naruto-kun. The blonde staggered, righting himself quickly as Lee arrived on the scene, Shikamaru and Choji in tow. Senpai, he wondered, guys, you find anything out there? Nothing good. Shikamaru muttered, we were too late. Whoever the third guy was, he took off with Hinata before we got here. Nani? Naruto spiked, wounds apparently forgotten. Then what the hell are we doing flapping our gums here for? Let's get going. Uzumaki. Kiba snapped, appearing before the blonde and swiping at him with his claws. You ain't going nowhere. Damn it, Kiba, the blonde cursed, weaving away from the blows as best he could. I don't got time to deal with you right now. Tough, Kiba snarled, eyes flashing red briefly. I've waited too long for this. I ain't letting you go till only one of us is standing. Don't you care about the fact some guy kidnapped a girl? Naruto yelled, grabbing the lupine's wrists and glaring at him. Don't you care what could happen to her? Not one bit, Kiba replied, lunging forwards and biting the blonde on the shoulder. Something's not right here, Shikamaru muttered, eyeing the fight with a wince as blood sprayed from Kiba's last move. This isn't at all like Kiba. What do you mean, Shikamaru-kun? Lee asked, whilst Choji retched behind a tree at the sight of blood. And not like Naruto, the Nara stated, watching the fight carefully. I never forget a face, or the person attached to it. And while I didn't know Kiba that well, from what I gathered from his gang, he's not the type to purposefully put a lady in danger, or resort to taking hostages. Maybe becoming a stand user changed him. Lee asked. Mizuki-sensei was supposed to be pretty bloodthirsty too. Mizuki-sensei was insane. Shikamaru countered. No, I think something else is going on here. He held up a finger for emphasis, but unless we can capture him, there's little point in me guessing. Should I intervene then? Lee asked, his bandages unraveling as he took a step forward, blinking as Shikamaru's hand held him back. Only if you want Naruto to punch your lights out. The Nara muttered, sighing exasperatedly. He's got this thing about people interfering with his fights. Wouldn't accept help if he was about to be squashed by Godzilla. T-Team. Naruto grit out, grabbing a tuft of Kiba's hair in one hand and the lycanthrope's throat in another. Do I look like a freaking chew toy to you? Kiba growled and swiped out, leaving a trail of scratches on the blonde's face, only to balk as Hurricane Heart's fist plowed into his stomach, the gauntlet rotating wildly, like a power drill. No. The lupine realized abruptly, even as the wind picked up again, circling around the arm like a hurricane, not a drill, a turbine. Furie, Naruto yelled, ramming his head forward in a savage headbutt, knocking his opponent's head back, releasing his wrist in the process. There was an explosion of air, followed by Kiba blasting backwards, spiraling through the air like a broken propeller, before crashing through a tree and coming to a halt, a good 30 feet away from his opponent. And that's with my left hand. Naruto rasped, gripping his bleeding right shoulder with said limb, before falling to his knees, chuckling weakly between gasps. Yer tabayo, everything's getting a little dizzy. Most impressive was the thought of one Uchiha Sasuke, eyeing the group through binoculars from the roof of a nearby building. It would appear that the stands awoken through Hyuga's gift are of a higher quality than those encountered before. He eyed the unconscious heiress impassively, having covered her with a blanket, as it wouldn't do for the prize to catch cold. Sad really, he muttered, if you'd only let that fool die, I'd have never have caught on to you. He shook his head, what an error on your part. He turned to regard the scene at the park again, shaking his head as the blonde's friends attempted to revive him, wincing as some unbidden memory tried to crawl to the surface. Why? He wondered, glaring at the blonde, his throat tightening somewhat. Why does he seem so familiar? He snorted, a shadowy figure forming behind him, red eyes glowing in the dark as it lifted his slumbering captive into its arms, the three tomo spinning slowly, almost menacingly. Probably just the smog in this crappy part of town. That said, he stepped off the side of the rooftop, touching down on the pavement with the ease of a cat, the figure hovering behind him just as a black car to pull up alongside them. He climbed in, the door shutting quietly as the car pulled away into the night. And there we have it, the anticlimactic conclusion to our SD-Con major fight. Kiba's stand, Wolf Rock. User and Yuzuka Kiba. Power, B speed, a range, E. Staying, a precision, E learning, A. One bound to Kiba's body, can transform Kiba into a werewolf-like persona. 2 capable of moving at high speeds and using canine senses to track opponents. 3 capable of tearing through metal with claws. 4 sense of smell and hearing enhanced tremendously. Still no news? Hayashi asked, looking out the window with his hands behind his back, looking as calm as ever, an impressive feat considering the situation at hand. Sumimasen, Neji offered, bowing his head in apology. We contacted the police as you requested. However, they have found no more leads concerning Hinata-sama's whereabouts than our other information networks. I see, Hayashi noted, watching the rain fall with a calm face, before returning to his desk, falling into a pose akin to Gendo Ikari as he closed his eyes with a sigh. That makes 2 days now, and still no word on her captor's description. My apologies, Neji offered. I arrived too late to see his face, and the man had already been struck unconscious when he abducted Hinata-sama. He nodded. Whoever he was careful not to let anyone see him. Hayashi was silent a moment, before raising his head, eyes regarding his nephew, except for one person. He corrected, earning a flinch from Neji. Hayashi-sama, the teen muttered, considering that the fact that Uzumaki was thrown off a building. Do you really think he'd retain any memory of the captor? That and more, Hayashi admitted. If I'm not mistaken, those two were discussing something or other on the roof, before the captor threw Naruto-kun off and made his escape. He nodded. I dare say Naruto may know the captor personally, either from a rival gang or a Yakuza group he fought before. Should we assume Uzumaki to be among the list of suspects then? Neji asked, blinking as Hayashi chuckled, eager to repay him for the wound. The Hyuga patriarch asked, chuckling again as Neji twitched. Pride in one's ability is not a crime, Neji, but too much pride has been the downfall of many a man. He got to his feet, gazing out the window at the rain. You are dismissed. I'll have my men look into the matter personally. Hayashi-sama, Neji wondered, looking up at his uncle in confusion, only for the man to raise a hand for silence. It is not that I have doubt in your abilities, Hayashi assured him, but exams are coming up, and I'm certain Hinata would agree with me that missing out at this point would be terrible for you. He smiled at his nephew. After all, the future of the clan rests not only on her, but you as well. Neji bowed his head, accepting the compliment, but clenching his fists at his sides as he thought of how he'd been railroaded like this. I shall take my leave now, he stated calmly. Good night, Hayashi-sama. Hayashi nodded, waiting for the door to shut before gazing up into the rainy skies. She hated the rain, he noted, eyeing a picture on his desk, the figures hidden by a beam of light. I wonder if her son feels the same way. Naruto moaned and rolled over, wincing as his body ached, eyes cracking open to gaze blearily about the room. I'm at Senpai's again. He wondered blearily, guess I must have passed out. He rolled over on the bed, blinking as he espied Chaoji's recumbent form sawing through logs by the wall, a tired-looking Shikamaru looking at him in annoyance. How the hell could you sleep through this? The Nara muttered, thumbing towards his best friend with a sigh. Mendoku's, guess being half-eaten by a werewolf has its perks. If it does, then the pain sure as hell ain't one of them. Naruto griped, wincing as he sat up, placing a hand over his shoulder gingerly. Damn, feels like he took a chunk out of me. Nah, Shikamaru assured him with a wave. Senpai and Gai-sensei treated your wounds. Looks like the fangs went right through without damaging anything vital. He shivered at the thought. Damn it, why the hell am I even saying such things so calmly? I should be freaking out. Chaoji snorted and rolled over in his sleep, scratching his backside in the process, earning a snicker and sigh from his friends. At least Chaoji knows how to adapt to changes. Naruto snickered, ignoring the glare Shikamaru was leveling at him. Speaking of canines though, where's Kiba? Gai-sensei treated his wounds and left him in his room. Shikamaru replied. He was really out of it though. He even reverted back to human form, which was convenient. He sighed. Can you imagine what it would have looked like trying to get a cab with a Darkstalker's reject and a bleeding punk over our shoulders? Pretty funny actually. Naruto replied with a grin, Shikamaru sighing as a headache came on, just as Lee entered the room. Naruto-kun, the elder teen greeted, walking over to the bed. Are you feeling better? Lots, thanks senpai, the blonde offered, scratching the back of his head with a guilty grin. Sorry for taking over your bed again. It isn't a problem, Lee assured him. Sensei and I were really worried. You'd lost a lot of blood by the time we got you here. He waved his hands placatingly at the blonde's look of concern. Relax. Nowhere near as bad as during the accident. Nothing a good night's rest couldn't cure anyway. That's another thing, Naruto noted, rotating his shoulder gingerly. I know I heal fast, but isn't my body, well, healing faster? That's because of the Hammond training, Lee assured him. It speeds up your healing factor, meaning you recover from injuries much faster than normal. More weirdness, Shikamaru muttered, waving a hand as Lee blinked at him. Never mind. If I hear any more my head might explode. Lee blinked, looking between Shikamaru and a snickering Naruto, before starting suddenly. Oh yes, he recalled. Gai-sensei sent me to let you know breakfast was ready. Chaoji snorted, sitting upright with a grunt and turning to regard the older teen sleepily. Someone say breakfast. he asked, blinking at the look of annoyance on Shikamaru's face. What? Guy muttered solemnly, ignoring the sounds of Choji scarfing down bowl after bowl of food. This is a predicament, but from what we can uncover, the third party wasn't expecting us to find them so easily. I doubt that, Shikamaru muttered, his finished bowl lying before him. He obviously recruited Kiba for the job, but something tells me he may have done something to him. Done something? Lee wondered, leaning out of the way as Choji snared the last mackerel with his chopsticks. Like what? Shikamaru-kun. Let's look at the facts, Shikamaru stated. First, the third party obviously knew about Kiba's abilities, so he either has knowledge of stand users or he was the one who gave the ability to Kiba in the first place. He held up a second finger. Second, Kiba's actions during the fight hinted that he wasn't quite himself. His lack of concern for Hinata's well-being, for example. The Nara eyed the group with serious eyes, Choji pausing in his actions as he listened carefully. Also, he added, there was the scorched part of the woods we found. He eyed the group warily. Unless this guy travels around with a flamethrower, it's safe to assume he's a stand user as well. Pyrokinesis is a fearsome ability indeed, Guy noted with a grim expression. After all, fire is what gave birth to the world, so a stand that can control it shouldn't be taken lightly. So, Naruto growled, glaring at the tabletop in restrained anger. So in the end we're no closer than before. Not necessarily, Shikamaru opined. Remember, we did manage to capture Kiba. No matter how unwilling he was an accomplice to this guy. He nodded confidently. At the very least, he can give us a description. Sorry to burst your bubble then. A voice called out, the group turning as one to eye the battered form of Kiba, bandages wrapped around his stomach and torso as he leant against the doorway. You shouldn't be up, Lee reprimanded, rising to his feet in concern. Your wounds. They still haven't healed. Keep your eyebrows on, pal, the injured teen muttered roughly. I heal fast, side effect of having a shape-shifting stand. He staggered forwards, only for Lee to support him, though it'd be nice if my legs would freaking cooperate, he admitted, falling into a chair with a sigh. What did you mean by that? Shikamaru asked, silencing Naruto with a glare as the blonde opened his mouth to rant at the teen. Were you listening to us? Every word, Kiba admitted, pointing at his ears. My hearing may not be as sharp in human form, but they're still better than a normal human's. Then you know what we were talking about. The Nara deduced. Care to explain yourself? From what your gang tells me, kidnapping isn't something you make a habit of. They'd be right, Kiba muttered, wincing as his ribs creaked. Despite all the things we get up to, hurting girls the one thing I can't stand. Then why'd you kidnap Hinata, huh? Naruto yelled, slapping the table with both hands and startling the group. If you're so high and mighty, why'd you become someone's errand boy? Who you calling an errand boy? Kiba yelled, the two getting in each other's faces, lightning crackling between them, until bandages wrapped around them tightly, dragging them back to their seats. Do I have to separate you two? Lee asked, Kung Fu Generation hovering behind him, the bandages trailing back to the arms. Before eyeing Kiba calmly, continue, Kiba-kun. Kiba eyed the older teen warily, before sighing and shaking his head. I dunno why really, he admitted. It just seemed like the only thing to do. He shook his head for emphasis. It's weird, but I feel like I've been asleep this whole time, like I'd been watching a movie in slow motion. Asleep, Shikamaru repeated, raising an eyebrow. You mean you turn into a bloodthirsty werewolf whenever you doze off? Remind me to keep you pepped up on caffeine. Not like that, Kiba snapped, wincing as it made his ribs pop. I mean, you know those dreams where you can feel yourself falling but wake up just before you hit. He waited until the group nodded. Well, it felt like I was stuck between the part where I was about to hit and the part I woke up. That made no sense at all. Naruto deadpanned, eyes shut for emphasis, earning a sigh from the group. Actually it does, Guy replied, crossing his arms and nodding. You may scoff at the idea, but the military and certain mafia groups are quite skilled in planting hypnotic suggestions in people in order to get the job done. He nodded towards Kiba. It's a long shot, but it would explain Kiba's lack of memory. One question, Shikamaru pointed out, pointing at the teen. Have you always been a stand user? No, Kiba stated. I gained my ability a while ago, a day before all this happened actually. Which means that our mysterious third party must have given you your ability. The Nara deduced. Think back, what can you remember? Kiba closed his eyes and frowned, humming deeply for a while as he tried to recall the first time he'd gained his powers. Flashback. You must be the leader of the Red Fangs, a shadowy figure noted, upper body shadowed by the overpass he was standing under. Yeah, what's it to you? Kiba snorted, eyeing the figure with a smirk. What a pansy, he sneered mockingly. I could snap his wrist like a twig. I hear you've earned quite the reputation as the second toughest street fighter in East Konoha. The figure noted with a wry smile, quite an achievement. Hey, the loud punk yelled, who you callin' number 2? There ain't no one tougher than our boss, Urusei. Kiba snapped, silencing his subordinate with glare, before leveling a fiercer one at the figure in the shadow. Alright pencil neck, what do ya want? I have a proposition for you, the figure offered. How would you lie to become the strongest fighter in all of Konoha? He held out a hand, one in his pocket as he reached out. I can help you, for a price. Kiba scoffed, flipping the bird at the figure with a smirk. So that's it? He mocked, turning on his heel. Take a hike, druggie. I don't do stimulants. You obviously don't do baths either. The figure noted, a mocking tone entering his voice. But then again, a mutt is a mutt. Kiba rounded on the figure with a snarl, only to gasp as an arrow shot trough his shoulder, knocking him on his back. Boss, the group yelled, running forwards out of concern for their leader, only to freeze, falling down unconscious, their eyes blank, as if in a trance. What the? Kiba panted, unable to move anything below his neck as he gaped at his gang. What did you? Still alive, the figure noted, pressing a foot on the teen's cheek as he gripped the arrow by the shaft. Impressive. I guess even a dog has his day. He yanked the arrow out viciously, the weapon slipping out like a hot knife through butter, leaving no wound despite all logic. Now let's see those fangs of yours. Kiba convulsed, snarling fairly as he felt his muscles bulge, his joints realign as his feet lengthened, his shoes and jacket ripping as he lunged at the figure's throat, only for an invisible hand to wrap around his own. Down puppy, the figure's voice ordered, a set of crimson eyes with 3 commas circling the pupil glaring into the lycanthropes. A dog that bites its master gets put down after all. Kiba felt himself go numb as the voice echoed around his skull. He dimly recalled trying to order his arms to move, only for them to ignore him. Tomorrow at noon, the voice instructed, you are to go to the warehouse area in East Konoha. There you will kidnap this girl. An image of a pretty, white-eyed girl flashed through the teen's mind, even as he tried to resist. Won't he grit out stubbornly? Don't take hostages. Naruto will be there. The voice instructed, sending a shudder through the teen. Bring the girl to me, and you can be sure he'll fight you to get her back. Naruto fight. Kiba managed to get out, a rush running through him as some primal instinct took over, managing a last no Naruto no deal. Before succumbing to the voice's will. Agreed, the figure stated, the red eyes glowing. Now go to sleep, little puppy, and don't forget your mission. End flashback. The next thing I know, I'm being sent flying into a tree by whatever the heck ramen for brains here did. Kiba admitted, nodding towards Naruto, who stuck his tongue out at him. So you can't remember anything about the guy at all? Shikamaru implored, his face, his clothes. Actually, Kiba muttered, frowning. He looked like he was wearing some sort of school uniform. He shook his head, not from this area though, but it did have the Konoha leaf on the collar, meaning it's a private school. Guy noted with a nod, they're the only ones that place badges on the collars, most make do without them. And since the only area with private schools is North Konoha, Shikamaru added, it's safe to say our culprit may be hiding out there. Yada. Naruto yelled, getting to his feet with a smirk. If that's the case, let's storm the place and raise hell until we find the guy. Hold it there, Wild Bill, Shikamaru called out, stalling the teen in mid-charge. Do you know exactly how many private schools there are in North Konoha? 2. Naruto wondered hopefully, sweat dropping as the group shook their heads at him. 3. Try 10. Shikamaru replied snidely, each with ties to different social standing, links to major companies and government bigwigs. He eyed the teen with a deadpan expression. You go in there with all guns blazing and you'll get arrested before you can even say stand, let alone summon yours. Naruto slumped in defeat, a cloud of depression hovering over him as he returned to his seat and sulked, Chaoji patting him on the back. Off to the side, Guy thought in silence for a moment, before sighing dramatically and shaking his head. As it is, we cannot go to the police about this, the instructor stated, nodding at the looks of confusion on his students' faces. I highly doubt they'll buy Kiba-kun's story, and besides, they'd want to know who saw fit to decimate the park yesterday. Naruto and Kiba sweat dropped at this, knowing that the Konoha Nature Preservation Society had a nasty habit of stringing people up by their thumbs for littering, let alone actually damaging the environment. That being said, Guy stated, I suggest we discuss this later on. He nodded at Lee, smiling at his protege. Your track captain called. They're starting after 9. Lee nodded and rushed up to his room for his things, Guy turning his attention to the other 4. Chaoji-kun, Shikamaru-kun, I told your parents that you were visiting Lee on a sleepover since you all got caught up in the rain. He nodded solemnly. They want you back as soon as possible, however, so I would suggest you think about heading back. And as for you two, he stated, turning to face the two invalids, you may both be fast healers, but until I say otherwise, neither of you is to leave this house or strain yourselves, am I clear? Yes, sensei, the two moaned, shivering at the aura of righteous authority the energetic instructor was giving off. So what do we do now? Chaoji wondered, walking alongside his friend as they made their way home. It's not like we have much else to go on. Maybe Shino can help out again. Shikamaru muttered, wincing at the thought of their classmate. Then again, we still don't know what kind of favor he's gonna ask of us, so maybe we should save that card for later. Chaoji nodded, shuddering at the thought of what their silent classmate could possibly want. He blinked as they came up to his house, before waving at his friend. Catch ya later, Shikamaru. He called out, I hope your mom doesn't kill ya. Thanks for the sympathy, the Nara muttered bitterly, walking the remaining way to his own house with the air of a condemned man. Mendocuse, what the hell did I do to deserve this? Things have been going as planned, Sasuke reported, chatting into a mobile phone as he sat in the back of a black car. Hinata lying covered on the seat beside him. Yes, I'm certain this is the best tactic. Taking Hyuga-sen directly to the academy would be a tactical error, not with him watching over everything. I can assure you, a serpentine voice coaxed over the line. He will not suspect a thing. The caller chuckled darkly, a tone that made the Uchiha's skin shiver, as if something slimy had just slithered under his skin. However, I trust your judgment. I expect good results from you as always, Sasuke-kun. One slight hitch, however, Sasuke added, and Yuzuka failed to defeat the rats that have been running around. Never send a dog to do a man's job. The serpentine voice quoted, chuckling again, no bother, have him erased along with the others. Should I face them myself? The Uchiha asked, feeling an inexplicable rush at the thought of going head-to-head with the fabled Hurricane King. Even if he was an idiot that got lucky. He frowned as the person on the other end chuckled again. Hyuga, chomping at the bit are we? The voice queried dryly, earning a twitch from the Uchiha. No need to dirty yourself to dealing with trash, Sasuke-kun. If the data we compiled is right, there's a sleeper just waiting to finish the job. Sleeper, Sasuke repeated, cocking an eyebrow in interest. You're saying we have an agent on the inside? Not as such, no. The voice admitted wryly, more like a failed experiment that may yet serve some good given the right incentive. He chuckled again, something you're quite skilled at providing. Sasuke frowned, a dark figure appearing beside him, arms folded under large wings that resembled twisted webbed hands, the red eyes glowing menacingly. Understood, he muttered, nodding his assent. As soon as I've delivered the package to a safe house, I'll contact this sleeper. He dismissed his stand with a frown, have the necessary details ready. In a darkened room, a figure smirked at the mobile phone in his arms, the dial tone audible as he held it before him. He's upset with me, he noted aloud, a twisted smirk coming to his face. Such a headstrong young man. He really needs to relax more. Is it wise to keep goading him like that? A figure asked, hidden in the shadows, light reflecting off a set of spectacles. After all, if you push him too far, your concerns are appreciated, the first figure stated, rising out of his chair, his khaki suit trousers rustling as he stood up, pulling on a matching suit jacket as he checked his reflection in the mirror. However, I assure you we have little need to concern ourselves about Sasuke-kun. He grinned, long black hair flowing behind him as he made his way towards the door, donning a pair of glasses. After all, he needs me as much as I need him. The second figure nodded, a white lab coat catching the light. I should return to my post, he stated. I'm already going to be late as it is. I'm counting on you, the older figure stated, leaving the room and closing the door behind him, chuckling as he made his way up the steps. Hyuga, everything is going according to plan. 2 days until the end of spring break. Neji thanked the driver for his time and turned back to face the academy, gazing up at the pristine walls with an impassive face, before making his way into the boys' dorm. He nodded at several underclassmen as they waved at him, answering their queries about his break curtly, before making his way towards the senior dormitories. You're looking charming as always, an amused voice called out, a figure leaning against his door pointed out, dressed in a senior boy's uniform. Care to share? Out of my way, Sayatome. The Hyuga muttered, glaring at the figure in annoyance. I am hardly in the mood. Mo-yu, the figure sighed, revealing itself to be a pigtailed youth with a slight, athletic frame and warm brown eyes. Is that how you treat your roommate after being away for so long? Neji pushed past the figure and entered the dorm with his key card, sorting through his cupboard to ensure his things arrived safely. The pigtailed teen raised a delicate eyebrow, taking in the Hyuga's actions with interest. No news at all, not even a ransom demand, Neji admitted, after turning to ensure the door was shut tight, his roommate leaning against it. And both the police and uncle's spy networks have turned up empty. This isn't the work of some simple kidnapper. Sure you don't want some backup? The youth asked, grinning helpfully at the long-haired teen. After all, 2 heads are better than 1. This is my mess, Neji replied flatly, turning his head back to his things, pulling out a training gi as he sorted through his closet. And I will correct it, without help. The ponytailed teen sighed, leaving to grant the Hyuga privacy to get changed, knowing he'd be found in the gym until evening. Neji, the teen sighed, head resting against the door to the room exhaustedly. You can't keep punishing yourself like this. Knuckles tightened as the teen's eyes narrowed. I've got your back, even if you won't accept it. Midarashi Anko grinned as she sat in her favorite restaurant, nursing a mug of beer. Across from her sat a woman with curly hair and red eyes, sipping lemonade and dressed in a sensible blouse and jeans. He's still dodging the question, Anko cackled, chugging down half her drink and leering at her friend. God, Kurenai, why don't you dump the bastard? He's sweet, Kurenai replied, playing with the ice in her drink. He's just ... not ready to commit to anything yet. More likely he doesn't want to give up the bachelor life. Anko snorted derisively, munching away at some dango, ignoring the look her friend gave her. That's usually it, right? They come at you with all roses and chocolates, but mention the M word and they'll head for the hills. Asuma isn't like that, Kurenai defended. He's serious, upstanding, and he happens to like kids a lot. She gazed at her drink with a sad smile. He just doesn't think he's ready to raise one. So, Anko replied, arms behind her head, dango skewer between her teeth. Getting hitched don't necessarily mean having kids, provided you take measures. She grinned at her friend. Or are you one of those commando couples? Anko, Kurenai chastised, flushing scarlet at the accusation as her friend cackled, only to sigh and shake her head, jumping as a hand touched her shoulder. Thought I saw you here. A tall, bearded man noted, dressed in a white shirt, black pants and a gray fedora. He had a bouquet of roses over his shoulder and a lit cigarette between his teeth. Hey Anko, long time no see. Anko scowled and pointed over her shoulder at the no smoking sign, earning a sigh as the man quickly extinguished his cancer stick. Those things are gonna kill you, she pointed out, to which the man chuckled. True, but that's a long way off yet. He handed the bouquet to Kurenai, who smiled and took them. Anyways, sorry to interrupt your girl time, but Kurenai and I have a date. Yeah, whatever, Anko snorted, waving at the couple dismissively. Now get outta here before you gimme cavities. The purple-haired instructor waited until the two were about to leave before smirking. Hey Kurenai, she called out, remember, if you get tired of waiting, just chain him to the bed until he says yes. She leered at the blushing couple, giving him a little incentive may help. Asuma blinked in confusion, only to be pushed out of the restaurant by a furiously blushing Kurenai, amidst the cackles of her demented friend. Rather vulgar of you, a voice noted wryly. Did you really have to yell that across the restaurant? Anko turned to glare at the person in the booth behind her, only to blink at the sight of a young, raven-haired youth in a North Konohagakuin uniform. She winced at the sight of it, bad memories rising to the surface before shaking herself mentally, not willing to let her guard down. What business is it of yours, brat? She muttered, turning away from the teen in annoyance. Not like anyone really cares. She downed the rest of her beer and called for another, scowling as the youth chuckled. You haven't changed a bit, the teen noted, rifling through a file on his table. Same attitude, same lack of restraint, same taste in beverages. He winced as he eyed the massive mug of beer that was set down before her. How on earth can you drink that stuff? Who the hell are you? Anko growled, turning her head to glare at the teen, as he smirked at her with his hands bridged. Just a messenger, the teen replied, one with some rather explicit instruction to give out. He stood up, smiling at the woman as she did so as well. Care to meet me out back? Unless, of course. He trailed off, eyeing the door Kurenai and Asuma had just left. Out back, Anko repeated, snorting mockingly. Get right to the point, don't ya? She grinned at the disgusted grimace on the teen's face. Aw, what's the matter? She teased, not hit puberty yet. The teen scowled and pushed past her to the back door of the restaurant, Anko following closely behind him. Flipping open the door and stepping out into the air, the teen eyed the deserted back alley carefully, before nodding. This should do, he noted, looking around warily. I don't particularly want anyone seeing this. He lunged to the side as Anko's foot came rushing at his back, flipping upright and watching her warily. Was that necessary? I told you, I'm just a messenger. I don't give a crap, Anko muttered, popping her knuckles. You think you're the first lackey the Yakuza have sent at me? She snorted. I'll give you credit for the schoolboy disguise. Almost got my guard down. But don't think you're walking away with your balls intact. She struck out again, kicking a trash can lid into his face, which he ducked under, leaning out of the way of her rising knee and using his momentum to flip backwards, ducking under her strikes carefully, before grabbing her arm and attempting to dislocate it at the elbow, only for Anko to twist round and come at him with a knee to the head, which he barely avoided, skidding back to a safe distance as the two eyed each other. She's pretty good, Sasuke admitted, gasping for breath as he watched the woman warily. Same style, same movements. She's definitely the one he was talking about. Your snake style is quite elegant, he called out, smirking at her confidently, but why don't you quit holding back? Oh, don't you worry, Anko grinned, popping her joints back into place. I'll have your balls on a platter before the evening's up. Charming, Sasuke grimaced, putting his hands in their pockets. But not what I meant, surely you haven't forgotten about it, Anko muttered, eyes narrowing dangerously. The hell are you talking about, Yukuso Toriyama? No need to be coy, Mitarashi-san, Sasuke mocked. I'm not part of the Yakuza either, I'm here on his orders. He smirked slyly. He seems to have a use for you. Anko's eyes narrowed to slits as she bit her lip, knuckles popping under the pressure she was exerting on them, before smirking dangerously. I see, so he's sending one of his toys to fetch me, is he? She spat to the side, outstretching her arm as something coiled around it. Well, he can keep dreaming. Sasuke leapt back just in time to avoid being impaled by numerous projectiles, which instead embedded themselves in the ground. He raised an eyebrow at the sight of the almost intangible serpent coiled around the woman's arm and waist before nodding. I see, so that's your ability, is it? You can see it, huh? Anko muttered, her hand raised, the serpent coiling around her arm to rest its head against her palm. Shouldn't be surprised, he only did go for the pretty ones with talent. She snorted, though you're not really much to look at. I really couldn't care on the subject, Sasuke admitted, hands in his pockets. Now what say we discuss this like civilized people? I'd say, screw you, Anko yelled, thrusting an arm out as the serpent opened its mouth, launching more projectiles at the teen, only to blink as a webbed claw appeared out of nowhere, sheltering the teen from the onslaught. I was hoping it wouldn't have to come to this, Sasuke admitted, as the wing was raised to reveal his stand. The red eyes locked onto Anko's own. But it is so much more effective, Anko would have replied, but she was rather preoccupied with gazing into the red eyes with the three spinning tomo, the darkness gathering around her like a cloak. Kuso, as I said, no stats this time round. However, things are heating up for Naruto and Co. Shikamaru, the lazy teen, moaned and collapsed on his desk, his half-finished homework cushioning his face as he wondered what on earth his beloved mother wanted now. The teen had finally gotten around to finishing off his assignments, no thanks to Choji and Naruto needing his help, and he really wasn't in the mood to be chewed out over some trivial little fault. It didn't sound like her "I've got chores for you" yell, he noted with a sigh, walking to the door and making his way down the steps. But it's too loud to be her "I caught you sleeping again" yell. No sooner had the teen entered the main hallway did he find himself blinking as something was stuck under his nose, courtesy of a rather vexed-looking mother. Just what do you call this? Mrs. Nara asked, veins popping all over her forehead as she glared at her only son. Just what the hell have you been up to? Aw shit. Shikamaru winced, gazing at the charred remains of Hinata's bra in mortification. I forgot I put it in my pants pocket. Calm down, honey, Shikaku tried placatingly. There's probably a good explanation for this, he trailed off as his wife glared at him, sending an apologetic look towards his son that clearly said, I tried. That isn't mine, Shikamaru replied, mentally kicking himself as soon as the words left his mouth. Someone's obviously playing a really bad prank. I'll just bet it's that useless delinquent Naruto. The Nara matriarch snapped. You've been hanging out with that hoodlum for so long you're starting to act like him. Shikamaru winced and looked down, letting the tirade wash over him like always, knowing it was better to just comply with her wishes and get it over with. Your schoolwork's been in the toilet ever since you started hanging out with that hoodlum, Mrs. Nara continued, ignoring the fact that Shikamaru's study habits were always questionable at best, pointing at her son for emphasis. Just how do you expect to get into a decent university with scum like that dragging you down? Shikamaru flinched, his knuckles tightening unconsciously, surprising himself at the action. Off to the side, his father noticed it and raised an eyebrow in interest. Oi, Kiba called out, sitting in front of the television in Lee's room with Naruto, the two playing a heated match of Tekken against one another. How come you let those guys tag along? Who? Naruto asked, grimacing as Kiba's king put his jin into a headlock, earning a sigh from the other teen. The lazy guy and Chubby. Who else? Kiba replied, cursing as the blonde got out of the hold and launched a combo in his face. I mean, last I checked you weren't too popular with their folks. Nah, that's just Shikamaru's mom. The blonde replied offhandedly she's part of the district council, so naturally she thinks I'm a bad influence. She ain't wrong, Kiba replied with a smirk, dodging a punch to the shoulder as he delivered a fierce suplex to Jin. Mind you, I'm not one to talk. What with the gang and all, it's not like we ever did any harm. Naruto countered, replying with a low combo and dodging to the side, but just because we get into scraps with those Yakuza assholes she thinks we're worse than trash. Tell me about it, Kiba muttered. You wouldn't believe some of the crap my gang and I've been through, but we never once attacked anyone that didn't deserve it. He shook his head, but of course, little Miss Proper don't see things that way. The two sat in silence for a while, the only sound coming from the speakers as they pounded each other relentlessly. Wouldn't surprise me if she forbids Sloth Boy from coming over, Kiba muttered, grinning as he lowered Naruto's health all the way down to a little sliver. I know her type. I wouldn't worry, Naruto replied, smiling confidently, earning a look from the other teen. Shikamaru's not the type to just forget what matters. Remember, Mrs. Nara instructed, lowering her voice and turning on her heel. In this society, it's better to sever all ties with worthless trash than to let yourself get dragged down by it. Fresh, Mrs. Nara paused, turning in shock to gape at her son, who had just punched the wall so hard his fist was starting to bleed. Shikaku raised both eyebrows, but remained where he was, intrigue and surprise battling for control of his face. Trash, Shikamaru muttered, head lowered, either from pain or anger, as his frame trembled. So hanging around with the only person that accepts Choji and me for who we are makes me trash. He smirked, raising his head to grin wryly at his shocked mother. Fine, then call me trash if you want. With that he grabbed the remnants of the bra and stuffed it into his pocket, turning on his heel and walking towards the front door, shooting his father a neutral look, noting the look of respect on the man's face. As the door shut behind him, Mrs. Nara finally snapped out of her shock, sputtering indignantly and looking at her husband. Did you see? Did you hear what he said to me? She yelled, pointing at the door in outrage. That brat's done more damage than I thought. We have to get him away from our kids as soon as. Shikamaru hasn't been corrupted, Shikaku countered, cutting his wife off. Much to her shock, he's too lazy to let someone mess with his head, and he's too smart to let someone lead him around by the nose, even if he doesn't always show it. He held up a hand for silence, savoring the moment, because he just knew it wasn't going to last. Besides, what you just said may be the way society thinks, but it's not how it works in real life. The man smiled, eyeing the picture on the wall that depicted three men. The center one was a younger, smaller-looking Akamichi Chusa, his arms resting on the shoulders of Shikaku, and a blonde-haired man. The three decked out in intern clothes as they grinned at the camera. Those who break the rules are trash, Shikaku agreed, frowning at the memory of the failed attempt on his son's life, and of how Naruto had gone running off in a rage shortly afterwards. But those who would abandon their friends for personal gain are less than trash. He eyed his wife neutrally, the woman gazing at him in shock, not used to being on the receiving end of a lecture. You can't just order men to stop being friends with someone. We'll defy you out of sheer principle. He grinned. Besides, hanging out with Naruto may not have done his grades any good, but it's done wonders to get him up and about. I still don't like it, Mrs. Nara huffed, crossing her arms as she looked to the side stubbornly. That boy's a delinquent through and through. Was I any better when you met me? Shikaku asked teasingly, to which he received an embarrassed flush. Outside the house, Shikamaru leant against the front door, his eyes closed as he listened in on the conversation. Never knew you were the type to make speeches, Oyaji, he muttered wryly, before groaning and covering his face with his hand. Mendokused, I really did it this time. She's gonna rip my ears off when I get back. He glared up at the clouds, which seemed to morph into a familiar, whiskered face, grinning down at him cheerfully. Naruto, you bastard, the teen scoffed, stepping away from the door with his hands in his pockets. One of these days I'm gonna slug you one right in the... King fell backwards, courtesy of a Musu Renkin to the face, the screen declaring Naruto as the winner as Kiba gaped in shock. No fair, the lycanthrope howled, pointing at his rival accusingly. You distracted me. Hey, you were the one that brought the subject up. Don't go pointing fingers at me. Naruto countered with a smirk. Besides, we both know who the real king of the Iron Fist is. Yeah, and it ain't you. Kiba snapped, the two glaring at each other, only to blink as the door opened, to reveal Lee. Here you are. The older teen greeted. Guy-sensei told me to let you know that school's opening up tomorrow, and that if we want to arrange a meeting we could do so after classes. Sounds like a plan to me, Naruto admitted, turning to grin at Kiba. Why do you say Wan-chan? You up for it? Don't call me Wan-chan, Kiba barked, hackles rising as his eyes flashed, Lee blinking as the two squabbled like little kids. Sighing, the elder teen sent out his bandages to restrain them, holding them apart even as they struggled. Arguing like this is getting us nowhere. the track star muttered, and making any plans with classes looming ahead of us would be foolish, so I think it would be best if we met up with Shikamaru-kun and Choji-kun after school. He eyed the two rivals carefully, before releasing them and nodding towards Kiba. Your wounds have healed. I suggest heading home and meeting up with us later. He turned to Naruto. What about you? Will you be staying over again? Nah, Naruto replied, grinning gratefully. I better be heading home. Iruka-sensei's probably poisoned himself with that instant crap he lives on. Lee nodded, clapping them both on the shoulder with a smile, before leading the way down to the door. And so I stormed out, Shikamaru muttered, sitting with Choji at a diner, the large teen only half listening as he divided his attention between his food and the girl serving it. So I just know I'm gonna be in the doghouse later. Now, you'll be alright, Choji assured him, swallowing a spoonful of rice. Your mom just needs time to cool off is all. You think so? Shikamaru wondered, blinking as a bowl of soup was set before him, looking up into the gentle features of the diner operator as she somehow told him it was on the house and would cheer him up, without actually saying a word. Odd way of talking, he noted blankly, blinking to snap himself out of his daze, before tasting the soup. Hey, this is pretty good. Sat-chan's soup is the greatest, Choji contested with a small blush. Everyone that eats it feels like they can do anything. I'd settle for understanding women, Shikamaru joked wryly, to which Satsuki cheerfully convened she was a cook, not a miracle worker. You're always going on about women, Choji noted, eyeing his friend carefully, and you're always saying they're troublesome, but surely you have some preferences. Not really, Shikamaru muttered, devouring the soup at his usual sedate pace. I just don't see the point really. I'm hardly the catch of the day, so my choices are limited as is. Why get my hopes up? So you never think of getting married? Choji asked, earning a soft blush from Satsuki, which he grinned at. Sometimes, Shikamaru admitted, but nothing special. I just want to marry an average-looking girl, raise 2 kids, a boy and girl, then retire after the kids are grown and play shogi till I die. You've really thought everything out, Choji muttered, sweat dropping at his friend's statement while Satsuki giggled nervously. Not many teens think that far ahead. What can I say? Shikamaru muttered, rising to his feet with a lazy groan. I just have way too much time on my hands. He nodded to his friend and Satsuki, before turning on his heel. See you lovebirds around. I've got an assignment to finish up. Take care, Choji called out, before turning back to smile at Satsuki as she tossed another stir-fry into the air. And just where have you been? And Yuzuka Hana asked, hands on her hips as she gazed down at her autoto. You disappear for a whole day, and then turn up wearing that. Kiba growled and picked at the top of one of Guy's tracksuits, wishing the man had better taste in sportswear. Got into a fight, he admitted, stayed over at a friend's, since it was too far to come home. Another fight. The elder and Yuzuka sighed. You didn't try fighting with Naruto again, did you? No, Kiba replied with a wince, knowing it was half a lie, since he wasn't himself when he did it. Just some punks that figured ganging up on me would make it easier. I swear, Hana sighed, turning back to her patient. A pregnant wolfhound due for a checkup between you and Benayam here. I don't know which is worse. How's she doing? Kiba asked, running his eyes over the beauty of a canine, smiling as she licked his hand, scratching behind her ear. A lot better than Kiramaru, Hana replied. Mom threatened to have him spayed if he didn't stop knocking up the patients. Kiba shot a grin toward the grizzled-looking canine that was resting on the couch through the doorway. Kiramaru was widely known as the toughest son of Abage, pun intended, in Konoha, having actually survived being shot twice during gang attacks, losing an eye and ear respectively. The massive canine growled at the teen in a friendly manner, seeming to raise his eyebrows in a manner oddly akin to the fawn's. It was clear he wasn't too worried about the situation, and would likely do it again given the chance. Amen to that, brother, Kiba chuckled, scratching Benayam one last time before walking into the living room, past the reclining Kiramaru and up to his room to prepare for tomorrow. Across town, more specifically, in the boys' dorm of North Konoha Gakuen, Hyuga Neji sat in a lotus stance, his palms face up on his knees as he breathed slowly, drawing out the process for a whole minute, before exhaling in the same fashion. It was one of the most basic of training techniques for Hammon, but it was also one which he discovered could help relax the practitioner, especially when coupled with meditation exercises. He frowned as the door opened, admitting his roommate, who grinned at the Hyuga as he strode forwards. You've been at this for a while now, Sayatome noted, sounding impressed. I envy you. I can't go more than 5 minutes without my legs falling asleep. It's merely a matter of practice, Neji replied, not opening his eyes. By properly distributing one's weight and timing the breath just right, one can go for hours without moving from this position. You saying I'm fat? Sayatome asked, mild annoyance filling the teen's tone. Neji's silence all the reply the teen received. That's not fair. There was no need for that. When the stoic Hyuga refused to answer, the other teen sighed and made for the wardrobe they shared, pulling out some pajamas. I'm taking a shower, wanna scrub my back. The look of mortification on the Hyuga's face was well worth the desk lamp that was hurled at the teen. Still a prude as C. The Hyuga's roommate chuckled, slipping out of the uniform and sighing as the steam from the shower filled the room. Ah, well, wouldn't be Neji if he wasn't. That night, each teen lay awake, gazing up at their ceilings as they tried to sort through their thoughts. Shikamaru ran the current scenario through his head numerous times, trying to see if there was anything he may have missed. Needless to say, he would awake the next morning with a headache, as there were really far too many possible theories you could tie into Hinata's kidnapping. Chaoji wondered how they could pull this off without anyone getting seriously hurt. He didn't want to lose any friends the way they'd almost lost Naruto. He also wondered if Sat-chan made it back to Mahora alright, smiling at the phone number and email address she'd left him. Kiba growled as he recalled how the mysterious teen had led him around by the nostrils, vowing revenge, as no one used him as their own personal errand boy. He also suppressed a snicker at the telltale panting sounds that issued from the kennels, knowing that Kuramaru was at it again. Lee sat in a meditation stance, trying to clear his thoughts for the following morning, as he figured it was best to remain prepared. This was actually a regular routine he put himself through for track meets, so he would awake the next morning refreshed and ready for action. Naruto, however, was leaning against the frame of his window, gazing up at the waning moon as he thought of the girl he'd failed to protect. Thrice now, Hinata's image seeming to gaze down at him, smiling gently. I'll save you, Hinata, he vowed, clenching his fist as he eyed the moon carefully, even if I got to go through the whole city to do it. The next morning found the group walking as one through the gates of East Konohagakuen, drawing a few stares from the surrounding student body. Several noted the fact that Kiba and Naruto were walking side by side, the latter with his bag over one shoulder as the other walked with one hand in his pockets. Shikamaru's lidded gaze was oddly alert, and Chaoji wasn't munching down on anything. Even Lee was acting odd, walking at a sedate pace alongside the younger teens, rather than his usual half-jogging pace. Needless to say, everyone began formulating their own interpretations on the situation, with no less than 30 assumptions being made before lunch break. Can you believe this? Shikamaru muttered, scowling down at the courtyard as he leant back against the fence. So far they've accused us of starting a gang, an extortion racket, are grouping for an orgy, and best of all, formed a stinking boy band. The hell is wrong with people? Naruto muttered, shaking his head in disgust. I mean, come on, a boy band. Don't they think we have any self-respect? Yeah, Kiba agreed, nose wrinkling in a very canine way. And the only way I'd take part in an orgy was if I was the only guy. Can we change the subject? Lee asked, flushing slightly from Kiba's comment. We only have a short time before the end of lunch. What should we do? First off, I say we get Shino to help out. Naruto stated confidently he really helped us out before, and he seems an okay guy. Shino, the bug guy? Kiba wondered, shivering slightly. I dunno, that guy rubs me the wrong way. That aside, Shikamaru muttered his ability to gather intel would definitely come in handy, so we should try to recruit him. Sounds interesting. A low voice opined, causing the group to jump as Shino appeared from around the corner. I wasn't trailing you. I usually eat up here by myself for privacy. You just happened to catch me at the right time. So are you in? Shikamaru asked, Naruto and Lee making room for the teen as he sat down. I should warn you, we could be going up against the mafia if they can pull off something like this. There is an old saying in my family, Shino replied, even if the opponent is as insignificant as an ant, don't underestimate them. He nodded as one of his beetles crawled out from under his collar. Your group appears to be interesting. I wouldn't mind helping out again. Yada, Naruto cheered, wrapping his arm around the shocked teen's shoulders. I knew we could count on you, Shino. You may seem creepy, but you've got a good heart. Creepy, Shino repeated, sounding confused and surprised as he looked at the grinning blonde. Should I feel comforted or annoyed? Glad that's settled then, Shikamaru noted, patting his pants to get the dust off them as he stood up. We'll meet up after school to discuss our plans. I don't feel like being chewed out for skipping class. Can't we wait for a bit? Kiba asked, looking over his shoulder where the girls' gym class was doing laps around the track. I mean, the view's pretty nigh blog. Kiba spluttered as shook himself, water dripping down his face as he gazed up at the culprit in shock. Shino, face imperceptible behind the high collar and thick glasses, lowered the now empty container to his side. Do unto others you would to yourself, he quoted, turning on his heel. I highly doubt you'd enjoy being spied upon any more than they do. This is why I don't like the guy, Kiba growled, glaring at Shino's back as the teen walked away, Naruto and Choji snickering in the background as Lee coughed discreetly into his fist. Anko sensei is acting weird, one of the female students whispered, gazing at the normally energetic sensei as she leant against the wall, muttering to herself, looking like she had a fever. You think she's ill? More likely hungover. The other girls sniffed. You know what they say about her, right? That's not very nice. Another girl chastised. I mean, sure, she is a little odd and dresses flashy, but that doesn't mean she's a you know. Then what else would you call it? The second girl snapped. She struts around in short shorts and a top that just barely covers her, and hardly does anything to ward off the boys. But if we try to copy her, she drags us off by our hair. We are her responsibility, the third girl opined. She's just trying to protect us, you know. Protect us from what? The second girl snorted. From becoming washed up, booty-shaking tramps like her. She sniffed, only to blink as she realized Anko had disappeared. Where'd she go? The teen wondered, only to blink as a light hissing reached her ears, eyes widening as something coiled around her neck. Little girl thinks she's all grown up, does she? Anko purred, blowing into the shocked teen's ear. Well then, let's just see how grown you are. The girl's shrieks were cut off as an invisible, serpentine hide wrapped around her mouth, muffled cries turning to moans, as the rest of the group lay on the floor, eyes wide and blank as a low hissing filled the air. Naruto yawned, leaning back on his seat as he only half listened to Iruka rambling on about the history of Meiji government. Shikamaru was dozing lightly, Choji secretly munching away at his snacks, waiting for the final bell so they could meet up with the others. So freaking boring. The blonde yawned, covering his mouth as he put his feet up on the desk. I shoulda trashed the place more when I fought with Mizuki. Naruto, Iruka called out, a vein pulsing on his brow as he stood with one hand on his hip. Textbook in the other. Care to answer the question I just asked? The long-suffering instructor sighed as the blonde shook his head. Then would you at least try to pay attention? He asked, before returning to the lecture about the murder of Okubo Toshimichi. Naruto nodded lazily, only to abruptly stiffen as a jolt passed through his body, causing him sit up straight at his desk, startling the rest of the class as they weren't used to him paying such close attention. Something isn't right, the blonde wondered, eyeing the surroundings warily, as if expecting to be ambushed. I feel like something's watching me. He blinked as something bumped against his foot, looking down in shock at the serpent as it slithered over his shoes towards the desk next to him. The hell? He yelped, startling everyone as he leapt on top of his chair, only to blink in horror at the sight before him. Snakes were everywhere, wrapped around necks and hanging from the edges of the blackboard. One was even posing as a turban on top of Iruka's skull, the instructor unaware of it as he shot his favorite student a look. Naruto, the instructor yelled, slapping the desk, the serpent atop his skull tensing. How many times have I told you? Iruka-sensei, Naruto yelled, leaping across the room to grab the man as he passed out, the serpent removing its fangs from the man's neck and lunging at the blonde instead, only for Hurricane Heart to grab it and crush the head. The hell's going on here? Shikamaru cursed, stepping gingerly towards the front of the class, Choji following him carefully, trying not to agitate the snakes, as their classmates fell over unconscious. Why the hell didn't anyone else notice these things? The hell should I know? Naruto yelled, supporting Iruka in his arms, blinking as the door to the classroom snapped open, revealing a breathless Kiba and Shino. So you guys are the same, Kiba noted, wincing at the sheer number of serpents as they gathered round. Damn it, this is bad. Was there a breakout at the zoo? Highly unlikely, Shino replied, stepping forwards and grabbing a serpent by its head, holding it up for all to see. Look closer, you can see through it. A stand? Shikamaru wondered, but why so many snakes? I thought you could only control one. I guess it is a collective mind, like my alien ant farm, Shino suggested, eyeing the classroom calmly. Judging by the consistency and multitude, however, I think we can verify that the user must still be on campus. Another student, Shikamaru wondered, frowning as a serpent tried to sneak up on him, only to sink into his shadow and disappear. Mendokus. What are the odds they're acting on their own? Who cares? Naruto growled, standing up with Iruka in his arms, the man's limp arms dangling to the ground, the teen's coat rustling in a sudden updraft. Whoever they are, they just bought a one-way ticket on the Uzumaki Hand Basket Express. Things have really hit the fan now. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 4. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author kyugan on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.